much, Secretary Fuller. So we're going to call the meeting to order. Welcome to our March 7th, 2023 meeting. We'd like to start with a land acknowledgement, and today we're going to share the SDSU Imperial Valley land acknowledgement, and it will be shared by Senator Norma Aguilar.
Good afternoon. For millennia, the Kumeyaay, Kitsan, and Kukapa people have been a part of this land. This land has nourished, healed, protected, and embraced them for many generations in a relationship of balance and harmony. As members of the San Diego State community, we acknowledge this legacy. We promote this balance and harmony. We find inspiration from this land, the land of the Kumeyaay, Kitsan, and Kukapa.
Thank you, Senator Aguilar. I'd now like to share the principles of shared governance. Trust is recognized as a fundamental ingredient that is essential for effective shared governance. Without trust, the practices of partnership, inclusion, open communication, ownership, and accountability are likely to break down. San Diego State community members have identified 3 key principles for shared governance that all rely on the fundamental ingredient of trust, and those are respect, communication, and responsibility. So I'd like to welcome you. Greetings from our Imperial Valley campus. We're so glad to be here. Thank you, Imperial Valley Dean Nunez Imchuri, and administrators, faculty, staff, and students for hosting today's Senate meeting here on your beautiful campus. It is our goal to hold a Senate meeting here every academic year to help us feel more connected as an extended community. Imperial Valley, you're really important to the Senate, the main campus, and the communities that you serve. In honor of Women's History Month, the music that was playing while you entered the room, although I don't think you could hear it well, was a song called Flores Rojas, and it means red flowers. The author of the song is Rebecca Lane, a feminist artivist who is also a sociologist and poet. The song and illustrated music video also seeks to inform girls and adolescents about menstruation. And through this song, which also includes a series of music, mural art, and public spaces with local organizations, Lane shares a beautiful, healthy narrative about female embodied people, menstruation, and in a narrative that includes positivity, love, and tenderness instead of ugly, harmful myths, secrecy, and shame that dehumanize women and people who menstruate. This is Women's History Month, and so this is part of our celebration. Shifting gears as part of my welcome, Senate officers would like everybody to know that we received the feedback posted recently on the Senate listserv about how our meetings are run. We take how we run our meetings very seriously, and we will include this feedback in our deliberations as we plan future meetings. We are always seeking ways to improve the efficiency and effectiveness of both SEC and Senate meetings to get our business done while also building community through effective communication. We also want to encourage all senators and ex officio members to fully attend our meetings or line up a proxy ahead of time and be as present through the end of each of our meetings. We're going to do our best to maintain our schedule. And as Secretary Fuller's post on the listserv indicated, please keep the Thursday time slot after Tuesday Senate meetings available as requested as part of Senate responsibilities in the event we do need to have an extended meeting. I will now move on for the approval of the agenda. Secretary Fuller, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chair Butler-Bird. I'd like to move approval of the agenda for today's meeting.
And Senator Schellenberg, you're recognized.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you. Yeah, I'd like to make a motion that just to ensure that we have plenty of discussion time for the action items, that agenda items 6 and 7 are moved up to immediately follow agenda item 3. Thank you.
Thank you. So we have a motion on the floor. Can I get a second to?
Second,
Second,
And I'm gonna ask, can we approve this change by unanimous consent, or do I need to hold a vote? Is there anyone who would not like that change made? Seeing no hands, is approved by unanimous consent. So we're gonna move up item 6. What were the item numbers again?
6 and 7.
6 and 7.
That will be a resolution and sorry, my apologies. 5 and 6, my apologies. Resolution and action items.
Okay, 5 and 6. Thank you very much. It is approved. So now we will move on to approval of the Senate meeting minutes. Secretary Fuller, you're recognized.
I'd like to move approval of the Senate minutes from February 7th, 2023.
Second,
I see one hand up, Senator Atherton, you're recognized.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. I would like to move that we strike from the draft minutes 2 sentences under 6.3 Constitution and bylaws.
See if we can have Mario, can you pull that up on the screen so we can see it?
Minutes from 2/7.
Correct. It's actually, I think, from the 2/9 session, but it's on the same minutes.
What number was it again, Peter?
6.3 Constitution and bylaws.
Okay. Sorry. Yeah, 6.3.
Yeah. So we need to go down.
Down.
I-
Yeah.
could we see that, please?
Mario, we're still looking at the agenda. I think.
Oh, sorry. My mistake. Let me change my share. There it is.
That's it. You got it. Thanks.
So Senator Atherton, can you read off which lines you're speaking of?
Do I need a second? Before we discuss the matter, so that the 2 lines,
I think you were seconded already, weren't you?
You do need a second.
I don't recall being seconded.
I'll second this to see where it's going.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so you recall that the Constitution and Bylaws Committee proposed term limits of no more than 2 consecutive 3-year terms serving on the ASCSU, to which Chair Butler-Bird objected. And the minutes state that, in addition, she, meaning Chair Butler-Bird, calls into question the motivation, given she is the longest serving ASCSU senator at this time, and she cannot help but wonder if this proposal has anything to do with her being faculty of color. She questions why it was not brought up prior to her tenure. And I have 2 objections to these 2 sentences as follows. First, Robert's rules 48.2, I believe, clearly state that, quote, the minutes should contain mainly a record of what was done at the meeting, not what was said by the members. The minutes must never reflect the secretary's opinion, favorable or otherwise, on anything said or done. So the secretary has recorded that the chair of the Senate, quote, cannot help wonder if this proposal has anything to do with her being faculty of color. So this is tantamount to an opinion, since it's not based on evidence, it's not an action, and therefore it has no place in the minutes. Second, and much more seriously, the 2 sentences in the minutes insinuate that CBL was motivated by racist intent when it proposed term limits for ASCSU senators. This is a very serious accusation, and one that is not based on any evidence whatsoever. As a member of the Constitution and Bylaws Committee, I can say that the only reason the CBL proposed term limits was to make it easier for non-incumbents to successfully compete for a seat. Secretary Fuller and Parliamentarian Wheeler, who were also present during these discussions, can also attest to the fact that the issue of race did not come up. And as far as I can recall, CBL did not discuss how long Chair Butler-Byrd in particular has been an ASCSU senator. I still don't know. And I would like to remind you that the Senate referral to look at ASCSU Senate representation came from the Senate officers themselves. To then have thinly veiled accusations of racism leveled at CBL without evidence is extremely dispiriting and disturbing. Such accusations impugn the ethical integrity of CBL and its members and have no place in the public record. I therefore move that the 2 lines be struck from the draft. Thank you.
Okay, so there was already a second. Is there any other feedback or comments, either pro or against striking these 2 lines? Okay, we do have one hand up, and that's Senator Aguilar, and she's here.
Good afternoon. I am familiar with Robert's rules, and while the information can be kept to a minimum, it's not set in stone. And in particular, when there is a situation that merits more scrutiny, then that's where information exchanges is listed so that you can verify. I don't believe that there is anything wrong with including information that can be gone back to and verified.
Thank you, Senator Aguilar. I see one other hand up. Secretary Fuller, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chair Butler-Byrd. I just wanted to note that I was trying to track the gist of what was said in the meeting. I'm not quoting people. When I use the word wonder, I do so because she did not level any accusations at any particular group or people. She had a sentiment that was her experience of what was happening. And I tried to capture that because that was her argument against. I would like to also note that after these minute drafts were published, I did receive an email from Chair Arlette Baljan asking me to add additional information to clarify, which was left out, which I happily did. And so I feel like we've done our best to really capture the discussion around this idea in a way that is responsible.
Thank you, Secretary Fuller. Senator Somay, you're recognized.
I apologize, but I squarely disagree with Senator Fuller because names were named during that discussion, which is not reflected in the minutes, thank God. I think I'm in support of striking those 2 sentences. So that's all I want to say. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Senator Sherman, you're recognized.
Yeah, I am not in favor of striking these sentences, with all due respect, because I think context matters. Yeah. And I would just echo what Norma and Amanda both said. And my understanding of minutes is that, yeah, it's not set in stone. I also noticed below the paragraph we're looking at, there seem to be other minutes with other names, but I don't think anyone had a problem with that, below that even. So it seems like it's only problematic when something's being said that maybe makes people uncomfortable. Thank you, Chair Butler-Byrd.
Thank you. I don't see any other hands up. So I think we'll need to hold a vote on this particular issue. So if you're going to vote in support of striking those 2 sentences, please click the green icon in your under the reaction tab. If you're voting against it, click the red icon. And if you're abstaining, please please raise your hand. Secretary Fuller, you'll let us know when you have the count.
If you're not in favor?
If you're not in favor, click the X. If you're in favor of cutting those 2 lines, click the green.
But if I'm here, I can just raise my hand or?
Well, you really need to try to do it if you can on your phone.
The motion fails. Yes at 15, yes at 15, no at 24, abstain 31.
Thank you, Secretary Fuller. Any other comments about the minutes? Otherwise, we will proceed with the rest of the meeting. All right, one of the things we do need to do is to hold an election. And so I would like to move item 6.2 of the Committee on Committees and Election. We do need to hold an election for the let me see, the VP for SACD, the search committee. So Chair Marks is recognized.
Thank you, Chair Butler Bird, and good afternoon, everybody. So as Chair Butler Bird just mentioned, we do need to hold an election for the Vice President for Student Affairs and Campus Diversity. You all received the list of individuals who were nominated last week. But before we begin this election, I do need to call for nominations from the floor. And so at this point, I'm calling for any nominations. And I'm going to need some help. If somebody can help me say who.
Okay, so I see Brian Henschel and I also see Senator Mauricio.
Okay. Okay. I guess Senator Henschel first, I think is the first person you mentioned. So yes.
Yes, I nominate Senator Steven Schellenberg.
Okay, so accepted. Okay, so he will now be provided that Senator Schellenberg, do you accept the nomination?
I do, but I've informally posted my candidate statement in the chat.
Okay.
Realize it's not an official record of the Senate.
Okay, so for everyone, nomination has been accepted for everyone. His candidate statement will not be included on the ballot because that ballot has already been constructed. These floor nominations are done at the moment, so we're unable to add those in at this point, but he will be listed on the ballot as a candidate for the position. Who is the next individual? Oh,
Senator Mauricio, you're recognized.
yes.
Hi, I'd like to nominate David Camper.
David. Okay. Senator Camper, do you accept this nomination?
I'm here proxying for Senator Camper. He's in London.
Do you know if he accepts this?
Yes, I do.
Okay, nomination accepted. So again, just the same thing, his name will be listed on the ballot. He will not have a candidate statement associated with it. Are there any other nominations from the floor?
I don't see any hands, Chair Marks.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you, everybody. So I will include these two new floor nominations onto the ballot, and you will be receiving that ballot shortly. For those of you who are elected senators to the Senate, you will be receiving those ballots. And if you do not receive that ballot, let me know and I can send you the link. But everyone who is an elected senator should be on the email list that we're going to be distributing in just a minute. Also for everyone's information, the elections occur such that the individuals who are voted need to be voted by a simple majority, meaning that they have to earn 50+% of the votes cast in order to be elected. Just so that everyone is clear on the process. Any questions before I fix up the ballots and send those off shortly?
One question, David, can you notify us when you send out the ballot?
Oh, just notify. Yeah, I'll let you know once I've hit the send. Yes, I will.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you, everybody.
Okay, so I know we're shifting the agenda, but there is one report that I think is critical for us to go ahead and have, and that is a report from Dean Nunez Maturity. And so I wanted to introduce her briefly and then have her go ahead and share her short reports. The National Women's History Alliance, which spearheaded the movement for March being declared National Women's History Month, announced that this year's theme is celebrating women who tell our stories. This timely theme honors women in every community who have devoted their lives and talents to producing art, pursuing truth, and reflecting the human condition decade after decade. Today, let's honor Dean Nunez Maturity as the first Latina dean at Imperial Valley campus and the main campus as well. And let's give her a hand and some time to share her Imperial Valley opening remarks and report.
Hello, members of the Senate and Chair Nola Butler and members of the Executive Committee. Thank you for coming to Imperial Valley. I believe this is only the second or third time that the Faculty Senate has taken the time out of their energy and their busy schedules to come out and visit with us. And visiting people is really important for getting to know them and humanizing them, knowing that we exist and that we have existed since 1959 in Imperial Valley, when we first began as a campus for San Diego State College. Right next to our building where we are meeting today, we have the first high school in the city of Calexico, which has now been converted into a classroom and meeting space for us. This campus is really important because after the Second World War, we assessed that there was a critical shortage in teachers that were qualified and certified to teach our region. In 1955, the California State Department of Education recommended that certain state colleges establish off-campus centers or satellite centers to service areas to prepare and upgrade teachers. Such centers were geographically located in the areas of the state where the greatest need existed, and the Imperial Valley was one of them, to offer upper division courses to junior and senior years of college work. So for the majority of our existence, we have served transfer students. The legislative enactment directed San Diego State College to extend its campus 120 miles east beyond the Laguna Mountain Range to operate elementary teacher training centers in the Imperial Valley. The center serviced Eastern San Diego County, Imperial County, and Eastern Riverside County, a large geographic area which was remote for most four-year college facilities. At the time San Diego State Imperial Valley was started, we had the highest rate of substandard credentialed teachers in the state of California. And that is why we were established to change. On September 11, 1959, the Imperial Valley Center opened its doors by first leasing its property to Central Union High School in El Centro, which was at the time maintained as a junior college. The center began with 2 resident full-time faculty who I'd like to honor today. Dr. Joseph Rodney, who we named the Rodney Auditorium after, Dr. Richard Servey, and 3 part-time faculty, Dr. Francis Valentine, Dr. Morrow Stowe, and Dr. J.S. Fisher, who commuted from the main campus, and Ms. Secretary Barbara Shee. In 1961, a group of faculty and administrators traveled around the valley searching for a new home. John Stepling, current publisher of the Calexico Chronicle, at the time heard of their plight and committed to Calexico. Today, we have 2 campuses in the Imperial Valley. We have the Calexico campus and the Brawley campus, which currently houses our nursing and our public health faculty, and will be the future home of an $80 million STEM building to then house 2 or 3 new academic programs. At this moment, we have about 1,000 students that we serve here in the Imperial Valley, with a hope of increased enrollment to 2,000. We are a Hispanic serving institution. 91% of our student population is Mexican, Latino, Hispanic origin. 71.5% of our student population is female, 28.5% is male. 71% of our students qualify for Pell Grants. 91.8% are from underrepresented minority populations. Some of the biggest challenges we face as faculty and leaders working with our student population is that many of our students are first generation, which means their parents do not have college degrees to mentor them through higher education. 71% of our students are Pell eligible, which means our students come from modest household incomes. I do not say poor, because as we know, our people come with the funds of knowledge that help them navigate adversity and has taught them to be resilient and to pursue opportunities. But 79.3% of our students are first generation, 91.8% underrepresented minorities, which means that for many of us, higher education has oftentimes been a mystery and a far distant dream that is often unattainable. Recent investments in San Diego State and Imperial Valley have made it through the addition of the following services in the last 2 years. In the last 2 years, I want to say this over again because we have existed since 1959. Prior to this, we didn't have basic needs support services for our students. We didn't have a food pantry or coordinator. We didn't have a retention program to support students at risk. We didn't have career and veteran services. We didn't have campus security. We didn't have a shuttle service. We didn't have a cross-cultural center or program coordinator to promote diversity on our campus. We didn't have mental health counseling therapists and a case manager. We didn't have as many course offerings for students to choose from, or a learning support and tutoring center. Many of these services are new to our campus in the last 2 years. When students presented this list of services, I was quite stunned. When I learned that this was our first time in a year or so that we were having a career event. How could that be possible? What are we trying to accomplish? We are in the business of creating opportunities for a region that has been historically underserved and oftentimes ignored. Our goal is to increase educational opportunities for the students of the Imperial Valley, to bring issues of access to equity in education and make that a reality. Representation, as we know, matters. During the 1990s, SDSU Imperial Valley continued to grow and expand. However, the biggest growth and expansion has happened in the last 5 years. In 2003, we made a commitment to pursue first-year students, freshman students, through the Freshman Scholars Program. Started through Dean Patemi's efforts. We started a cohort of 11 young women who pioneered to be the first students coming out of high school entering San Diego State Imperial Valley. We have served historically to prepare teachers for this region. However, at this moment, we have 11 undergraduate degrees, 3 graduate degrees, and several teacher certification programs. In 2007, we had an RN to bachelor's in science and nursing program launched, which continues to grow. This last year, we began our first cohort of an accelerated BSN program, where we started with a total of 20 students, 10 first-year students, 10 transfer students. Today, we got notice that the School of Nursing has gotten additional funding to helpfully increase the capacity for us to prepare the nurses for this region, a region that has been historically underrepresented by the medical professionals of our state and our nurses. Our region was particularly hit hard through the COVID pandemic. As we know through research, communities of color experience higher death rates than average mainstream Americans. In 2009, SDSU had an all-time record enrollment of 1,003 students in its 50-year experience. The support we need from the Senate is first and foremost recognizing that we too are part of one SDSU, that although we have not been around for 125 years, we have existed on the map of California since 1959. And yet many of the students who graduate from the high schools of this region don't even know we exist because we never had a marketing budget. We didn't have the right support to make ourselves visible as a campus. For many residents of this community, unless you live in Calexico, you might not even know we exist because we don't even have signs on freeways indicating that we exist. We are now in the process of requesting them from the Department of Transportation. We need a commitment to ensure budgetary equity for the Imperial Valley. That means infrastructure investments are not just for funding faculty and staff, but also the infrastructure that will house our faculty and our staff, including IT needs, computers, and offices. We need your assistance and your solidarity in elevating our profile. We too exist, and we too are part of SDSU. We seek your to ensure San Diego State Imperial Valley receives equitable funding in our infrastructure to accomplish the goals that we are set out. We have recently discovered lithium, 1/3 of the lithium reserves in the world. And we have been here since 1959, and we have taken the challenge of seeing an $80 million STEM building grow, of seeing our bachelor's in social work grow, a master's in social work growth, a master's in homeland security growth, our teaching program restored, a bachelor's in science and nursing growth. The needs of this region are dire. Our people have taken a big hit with a pandemic, but historically, to have been known as a region with one of the highest unemployment rates in the nation is no longer acceptable when educational opportunities are available and we have not had our fair share. I ask for your solidarity. I ask for you to come visit us, take the time, come meet our faculty. They're doing an extraordinary work, carrying forward an academic program with very few resources. Every single person on this campus has 2 or 3 jobs, not one. On our Mesa campus, you can specialize in your area. Here, we can't afford to specialize. We have to do it all, but we don't have to do it alone. We welcome your solidarity. We welcome your presence. We welcome your visit. Come home. We visit you. Take the time to visit us. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Dean. Thank you, everyone. We will now move on with other elements in our agenda. So we're going to move down to, oh, wait, let me ask Chair Marks, have you already sent out the ballot?
Yes, he did.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm trying to multitask here, trying to watch the vote as well. Yes, the ballot was sent. There were no errors. 98 emails were sent. Kate, I was told you had a proxy. That's why you didn't receive it.
Last time on the Thursday meeting, I couldn't make it and I had a proxy for that meeting.
Oh, the
but
note
I'm here this meeting.
Oh, bugger. The note I got said it was all for spring, so I didn't include you.
Oh,
okay. I can send it. I'll send you the ballot right now because I assume your proxy is not here, so she can't vote. Is that correct? Okay, I'll send you the ballot right now then.
Thank you. Sorry.
No problem at all.
Thank you, Chair Marks.
So my apologies, everyone. We're working on it. They're trickling in. The votes are trickling in.
All right, thank you. All right, so we'll move on to item 5, the resolution. And
Kathy, you still there?
Okay, you're still muted. Okay, I think you just muted him. So, okay, so I'm returning with this important resolution that was developed by Senate officers on behalf of vulnerable, voiceless members of our community who have been impacted by gender-based violence. The title of the resolution is Condemning Gender-Based Violence and Supporting the Rights of Women and Other Vulnerable People. We thank DEI Chair Roberto Hernandez for his feedback, some of which were incorporated into this revised resolution. As a multicultural therapist and social justice educator and advocate for many years, I've worked with victims and perpetrators of gender-based violence. Many of the perpetrators were victims at earlier points in their lives. Healing from this form of violence is very difficult and can take a lifetime, and some never fully recover. This important resolution is an opportunity to speak for those who have been violated and have no voice, and hopefully prevent others from experiencing gender-based violence. The changes that were made in this particular resolution is there's one in the first whereas clause about we have originally had the Senate condemned, but that was changed to raise serious questions and concerns about the San Diego County District Attorney's Office decision not to file charges. There were a couple of grammatical changes that were made that brought we corrected those. There was a question about whether resolve clause 4 about the country rolling back legislation. We retained that because we feel like that is very true. As we saw that Walmart was doing some things that are going to even impact states that do not have inhibit the rights of women to have a choice regarding abortion. And so we bring this item forward and I make a motion that I make a motion for us to support this resolution. And can I get a second? And then I'll open the floor for debate.
Second.
Thank you. And if you have debate, can you please raise your hands and I will call on you. Senator Barboni, you're recognized.
Thanks. I still have some reservations about this resolution as it's presented and worded. I suspect when it's voted, it will pass. It will not pass unanimously, if that should matter. I think some of the whereases are still problematic. The first resolved just seems like common sense. I don't think anybody could not favor that resolved. The second resolved, I am very confused by. Does this replace, compete, add to the Blue Ribbon Task Force? How does a new committee, if it were approved, work with the task force that we have? So I think by dividing the issue with two task force only weakens the important work that should be done. Now, it could be that I misunderstand. It could be that I've made an error about what I'm reading, and I would be really, really happy to be corrected. What I would not be happy for, and I don't want to see this again, is that anybody might imagine that because I'm a man, that I'm speaking against this. If anybody were to mention that, that would certainly go against this very resolution, perhaps also be a Title IX violation itself. I don't think that could be countenanced on the Senate floor, as perhaps it has been in past times. But the way it is worded, the way it's presented, I cannot vote in favor.
Okay, Secretary Fuller, you're recognized.
I guess I have a question, and my understanding of the resolve clause, the second one, is that the Senate supports the establishment of the task force. It doesn't necessarily mean we would be establishing our own task force. It's just saying that we as a Senate support this thing that the university is already doing. That was the way I read it. So if there is some confusion, I hope that can be clarified. Because that's how I was reading it, and that would make sense. It wouldn't make sense for us to establish a second committee doing the same work. That would not be good use of our time. So I just really strongly support this. And, while the language may be imperfect and it may not be supported by everybody, I think that we have to find some way to get this passed, because it's important that the Senate make a statement about this, given everything that's happened recently and continues to happen on our campus. So I just really support the work done here by our colleagues to bring this to the forefront and to bring this and make this an issue and make it something that we speak to. It is important for the Senate to make a statement.
Senator Burnett, you're recognized.
Thank you. I'm going to be speaking in opposition of this as well. So I actually have concerns with all four of the whereas statements, but some of those are based on my personal opinions. So I won't describe my personal opinions and my disagreements with those whereas. But what I will comment on is the second whereas. We discussed this fairly extensively the last time, and I'm still not sure what are the serious questions or concerns. What are they based on? How is it that we have more information than the district attorney has? So I strongly disagree with that statement. I also disagree with the other statements, but again, that's based on my personal opinion. And even though I think those other three whereas statements are opinion-based and not factual-based, I'll leave that out and just make a comment on the second whereas. And of course, I'm also in favor of the first resolve. The second one, I agree, has some confusion, but the first four statements there, I can't support. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Right now we have 2 against and 1 for. Senator Chomay, are you speaking for or against?
I'd like to put a motion forward.
Okay, please go ahead and make your wait a minute.
I move to move all the whereas clauses into the rationale and just start with the resolve clauses as we all do at the ASCSU Senate. I don't see why, and I probably am not familiar with the functions of the whereas clauses, and maybe the parliamentarian Mark Wheeler could let us know what that is, but I feel like the whereas clauses are more belong to the rationale than as whereas clauses. So we could just start with the resolved and maybe tweak that the way people are suggesting, but that's it.
Okay, so I'm going to defer to our parliamentarian, Mark Wheeler.
To the questions raised, only the resolved clauses and the actions of the Senate are the concern that the Senate has with this resolution. It's the resolution and not the rationale or whereas clauses that are being voted on. Whereas rhetorical device is analogous to, and it is a choice between the rationale, and the whereas clause rhetorical choice has been the standard for the SDSU Senate. The rationale device is the standard for ASCSU. Both of them are designed to provide the body with information from the authors that the authors hope will be taken into account. As I said at the last Senate meeting, you can disagree with every whereas clause and still support the resolve clauses. You're voting on the resolved clauses and not on the whereas clauses.
I think it's just tied in a little bit too much with the resolved clauses, especially because the last resource whereas clause says be it therefore. So all the whereas clauses before it is a consequence, kind of like leads up to a consequence to the resolved clauses. And if people don't agree with the whereas clauses, it's really hard to separate those two. That's why I'm putting the motion forward.
Okay, so we have a motion. Do we have a second? There are 3 hands up, but I think you were focused on the main motion.
Sure, that could be seconded.
Okay, thank you, Senator Barboni. So we will now talk about this second motion, and we will come back to the main motion in just a moment. So if you have a comment about this new motion to remove the whereas clauses, please go ahead and speak. Chair Marks.
I'm sorry, to move them to the rationale, not completely removed.
Move them to a rationale. So go ahead, Chair Marks.
Yes, hello, everyone. I just wanted to, we've called the election. I want to share the results with the Senate and then talk about next steps. Is this out of order or is this okay?
It's out of order. I'll get back to you about that in just a minute.
Okay, no problem at all. Yeah, that's fine. Okay.
Okay, so I was wondering, is there anyone else to speak to this motion? Okay, we have a hand up. Senator Aguilar.
I've been reading.
Kathy, anything changed?
I'm not
Okay,
making,
perfect.
I'm not proposing any changes. What I'm going to say is that the whereas is, I don't see anything that is not true. What it's saying where the legal system is not meeting the needs of people who have been sexually assaulted. And we are taking a stand on how it was done. And it talks about, the dynamics and issues in their community that makes it possible for gender-based violence and make it an unsafe atmosphere for women, girls, transgender, other people. And whereas the country rolls back legislation that protects the rights of women, that is true. There's nothing that you can say that is not true about that. And so therefore, I am against the removal of those whereases.
Secretary Fuller, you're recognized.
I just want to add that this format for whereases and resolves, you see it in almost every single resolution the Senate passes. And And I'd like to just reiterate what Mark said, that the whereas clauses are not binding in some way. The resolve clauses are, that's what we're voting on. It's the authors of the document that created that logic. So I think if one agrees with the resolved clauses, they should have no problem voting yes for this resolution.
Okay, Senator Somé, you're recognized.
Okay, I just would like to reiterate that I'm not against this, okay? So I'm not against the notion itself that we are putting forward. I'm trying to mitigate people's disagreement with some of the whereas clauses, and especially because the word therefore is there, unfortunately, whatever clauses there are before it, and comes after it is a consequence. The second part is a consequence of the first part, and we are not removing it. I just want to point that out as well. We are just kind of moving it to the rationale and not to this consequence, therefore, kind of a relationship. That's all. I just wanted to make that comment. Thank you.
Okay, Senator Uradi, you're recognized.
Hi, I don't know if you can see me. Hopefully you can hear me.
We can't hear you very well, though.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that. On the phone, but I just want to say that I haven't been part of this, but I do like this because it is timely, not in regards to this recent case necessarily, but also there is definitely forced coercion into selling sex among especially freshman students, not just on this campus, but pretty much every campus in San Diego and Imperial Valley. It's a current research that I'm doing right now. So for that reason, I support this because I feel like, the whereas clauses sound strong, but it's not. It's just saying that these are these concerns that are kind of more global and maybe sparked by this recent incident and the outcome of it, but that really the nature of the rest, I think it is a very important thing. I don't know if there's other entities that already do this on our campus because there has been good effort in that direction, but I think it definitely doesn't not a harmful thing to have this, and probably very critical in having our eyes on this because we still have a long way to go, especially where we're located and sort of the trafficking, human trafficking, sex trafficking that's really been escalated, especially with people struggling financially more than ever. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. We have right now 3 speaking against moving the resolve clauses to the rationale. Pardon?
To the whereas clauses to the rationale, not the resolved one, sorry.
Yeah, we got it. And then we have 1 speaking for moving it. So Senator Stupin, are you speaking for or against?
I am speaking against moving these to the justification.
Okay, so please go ahead.
The reason is truth lies as much in what is here as in what is not there. And the absence of one set of facts is glaringly obvious. That is, if the Senate has serious concerns about the DA's decisions, then there should also be serious concerns about actions and inactions by SDSU administrators and administration, and the utter failure, at the very least, on the communication front, which has been raised by many students, by the public at large. And so the responsibility of SDSU, to me, the whereas clauses are about whitewashing the responsibility of SDSU. So if we raise concerns about the DA's office, which with respect to Senator Urada's comments, the current DA has been a nationally recognized champion for the rights of sexual trafficking victims and countering such actions. So the second whereas clause is problematic for that. But I speak against removing them because right now it speaks to the whitewashing of the role of SDSU.
Okay, Senator Skarsgård, you're recognized. Are you speaking for or against?
For, although I guess can you hear me? Okay, so, I think that what, Dr. Skupkin just said is really true. There's a lot more that SDSU could do to make the lives of women on campus safer. And we shouldn't let them off the hook for not doing what they need to do. Nobody's really done a lighting survey and parking and between buildings. We know that some of the fraternities, being fraternities, we've all been there and know what that's like, have parties, and they like to get women in there. You know, when they're going to have a party, then station somebody outside that place. So if somebody screams or has trouble or staggers out, there's actually security there. You know, I know it costs money, takes more coordination, but the truth is we need to be protecting women where they're the most vulnerable on campus. And we don't do that with facilities maintenance. You know, I think I said last time, you walk through the parking areas and the lights come on as you walk under them, but it doesn't tell you anything about what's ahead of you because it's dark. And we just have a lot of places on campus that I think if some women were to walk those things at night, we would find vulnerable places and we could have those things better for women. We could have, like I said, we have a better way of monitoring parties. Just the presence sometimes of a police officer can make a huge difference in what young men will try. And I think we haven't really gotten to the basics of some of the things that could be done on campus, in addition to some of the things that Dr. Sculpin was saying is, you know, we've got to make the administration more transparent about some of the things that are happening and why they're happening. And I don't see that. I don't see that it's a big concern to the administration. They just kind of whitewash it because they don't want people to know that this campus is dangerous.
Thank you. So we have 4 against and 2 for moving the whereas clauses to the rationale. So we won't be able to take any more against, but is there anyone who's speaking for the motion? Seeing none, we will go ahead and vote on this motion. And this specifically is the second motion to move the rationales to the to move the whereas clauses to the rationale. So if you're voting for that, please click the green button under your reactions tab. If you're against moving the whereas clauses, please click the red button. And if you abstain, please raise your hand. Okay. Secretary Fuller, let us know when you have a response to the vote.
The motion fails, 31 no, 11 yes, 23 abstentions.
Thank you. So we will
Thank you.
move back to the main motion, which is about the resolution. So anyone speaking for or against, please go ahead and raise your hand about the resolution itself. Thank you, and let me know if you're speaking for or against. Senator Adams, you're recognized.
Thank you. I just wanted to move the editorial change I put in the chat a few minutes ago for the second resolve clause. Instead of support the establishment of a gender-based violence task force, the change it to support the establishment of the gender-based violence task force, which would indicate that we're actually supporting the task force that's already been created by the president.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Senator Adams. I think that's in one of the resolve clauses, and we will accept that as a friendly edit. Thank you. Senator Schellenberg, you're recognized.
Yes, thank you. I noticed when the concerns about the SDSU administration were brought up was an interesting point. The difference there is that the administration was able to respond to questions and concerns of this body, maybe not necessarily to everyone's satisfaction, but they were given the opportunity to respond to questions that were raised. So again, I would love to have this be unanimous, but I think the language here is going to keep it from being unanimous. Specifically, I'll again point out for the two whereases that speak for the Senate body, specifically, the Senate has raised serious questions and concerns. I would always like to be able to put my finger on some sort of information as to where that question was raised, and specifically was the opportunity provided to the district attorney office, which their hands are largely tied, they're not going to respond. But I'm just interested in where we could put our actual, if it's minutes, if it is something like that. I just want to make sure that when we say the Senate, we're speaking for the body, which means that the body has voted in some manner, and this is captured in some manner. So that could be a difference of opinion. You could say the same thing about the Senate questions the ability of Title IX. We may as individuals question Title IX or the question the attorney's actions, but I just want to point out with the language matters here. We're saying the Senate has raised serious questions. And so my invitation to all of you is think about where have we as a Senate body formally raised these questions and shared them with the people to whom we're asking them. That's my only comment.
Okay, Senator Sherman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chair Butler-Byrd. I would like to speak for the resolution, but I do have a little tidbit that might help give a piece of an answer to Senator Schellenberg's question. And I might be understanding too what you asked, but I think it's actually a really good question. And I recall back in might have been the December Senate meeting, speaking directly to Jessica Rento in the meeting, letting her know about how students of mine had told me about how they were uncomfortable going to the athletic director's house for dinner, and also how everyone knew about what had happened, the students and the people that work for SDSU. And so I don't know if that would be an example of us directly speaking to the admin about some of our concerns, and that could be left open to our interpretation, but there's one piece. In terms of speaking for the resolution, I would just echo the points that have already been made by those speaking for, and also want to thank the authors of this for the force with which you've written this. A few people speaking against mentioned that first whereas is common sense, but that statement confuses me because if it was common sense, then we wouldn't need to write a resolution about it. We wouldn't need to create a task force because the violence keeps happening, and literally the rights of half the population are being stripped away currently through formal legislation, or at least attempts. I also wanted to add that I know last meeting I mentioned that 3 males spoke in opposition to the resolution, and I'm not sure if that's what Senator Barbone was speaking to when he what seemed like made a veiled threat about discrimination. But I apologize if that comment was harmful to you and hurtful, or that it was. But also I was simply stating an observation that I saw. So I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you for the time, Chair.
Yes. Senator Stupin, are you speaking for or against?
Speaking against, in addition to the whitewashing of the administrative role, that's by the way been also raised by survivor advocate Brenda Tracy after talking with the football team. In addition, I want to point to another question I raised last time, which is the relationship between this in the resolve and the existing sexual violence task force. I'm still waiting for an answer what the relationship to the existing task force is. Is this another task force, which on its face is, it's another task force with a very similar title and very similar purpose, perhaps slightly broader geographic scope, but it's not been made clear at all what the added sort of ROI of the additional task force is in addition to the existing sexual violence task force.
Hey, Senator Stupin, they're the same task force. Thank you for that question. Okay, 2 against and 1 for. Are there any other comments or are there 4 against this resolution? Seeing none, we will go ahead and hold the vote. If you vote in support of the resolution, please click the green icon under your reactions tab. If you're against it, please click the red icon, and if you abstain, please hold up your hand. Thank you. Secretary Fuller will let us know when she has the count.
This motion passes 55 yeses, 7 nos, 8 abstentions.
Thank you, Secretary Fuller. Now we will return to Chair Marks to give the results of the election.
Okay, thank you, Chair Butler Bird. My apologies for going out of order. Wasn't sure. So the election has been called and we received 77 votes. So to be elected to the search committee, you needed to receive 39 votes. One nominee did receive 39 votes. So that's Senator Schellenberg received 39 votes. So he will be elected to the search committee. We will need to run another election to fill the final vacancy since no other candidate received 50 or 39 votes or 50 plus percentage of the votes cast. Secretary Fuller, would you like me to read the numbers of everyone's votes so we have it in the record?
Yes,
yes.
I can also type it in the chat if you prefer. Which would you prefer?
I think putting it into the chat, we don't need the interim votes. We just need the final.
Final?
Yeah.
Okay.
But I think
Okay.
it's good for people to know so that they know.
Okay.
Please read them and also put it into the chat.
Okay, will do. Okay, so Adissa got 25 votes, Alvin got 12, Choi Yun got 12, Regina got 26, David got 22, and then, as I said before, Stephen got 39. So I will be sending off a new ballot. Stephen's name will be removed. The remaining candidates or nominees will be on that ballot. You may only vote now for one individual. And I will be sending that off in a few minutes.
Thank you very much, Chair Marks.
Thank you.
Now move on to item 6, our action items. Academic policy and planning has several items they're going to present, and Chair Locke, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chair Butler Bird. Yeah, we've got 5 action items. So I'll start with the first one, course prerequisites. This change ensures that SDSU complies with Title V by honoring students' catalog rights. While students can be strongly encouraged to enroll in new prerequisites, changes in prerequisites cannot be retroactively applied to students. And should I go ahead and make the motion?
Yes, please go ahead and make the motion.
The Academic Policy and Planning Committee moves that the Senate adopt the following changes to university policies, academics, course prerequisites.
And can I get a second?
Second.
Thank you. Now the floor is open for feedback. Seeing no hands raised. Oh, Senator Schellenberg, you're recognized.
Yeah, I just had a question about prior earlier catalog rights. Is it that everyone has catalog rights? It depends what catalog, right? So I'm just curious if prior, I think by prior you're meaning an earlier catalog, correct?
Can you point, are you looking at the language in 2.5?
2.5, yeah. It says with prior catalog rights. Do you mean an earlier catalog? I'm assuming.
We have to respect the catalog rights of when they came in.
Okay. But they always have catalog rights. That's what I'm trying to get at. So do you want it to read earlier? Because it will never be the later catalog rights. So it would always be an earlier. I'll throw that out there.
I think AVP McCall is in the meeting and might want to weigh in on this.
Yeah, thank you. Title V says prior catalog rights. And Stephen, I understand what you're saying, but it could be a future catalog. If the student changes their major, then they're entitled to the new catalog. And so prior is intended to mean if they came in with a catalog, that's the one that if they want, we have to live by.
We'll live by Title V language. Thank you.
So we do have a hand raised here in the room, and that's Senator Aguilar. You're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mike, as a former academic advisor, I have a question on 2.5. It says the student retains catalog rights with prerequisites. Would that apply, say, for example, a student comes in 2023, and for whatever reasons, personal reasons, they leave school and they do not file a leave of absence. What happens is currently is that they lose their catalog rights. So are you saying that that will overrule a San Diego State?
No, this would be continuous enrollment. All of our catalog rights deal with continuous enrollment.
But it's not specified there.
So we can put that in. Where would we put that in? Continuous students? Will that do the trick?
Students, having continuous enrollment.
We can do that. Thank you.
I think the term would be continuing students, right?
Well, the students cannot, they don't need to be continuing. They can take a leave of absence. Would those still be continuing students?
Yeah, it just means that they were enrolled previously. I think, but maybe somebody else knows for sure.
No, that's why I'm explaining. I am a former academic advisor, and I've run into the situation. I'm not for or against right now. I'm just wanting clarification, because if you have a student that came in 2023 and for whatever reasons they took a leave of absence and say they took it for 1 year and then they forgot to renew it, they lose their catalog rights.
You are absolutely correct. So students. Continuing students, is that okay?
You could say continuing students not on leave of absence.
I would say students with a continuous enrollment record retain catalog rights, because then you specify it is for that, because otherwise, whether they take a leave of absence or not, you're giving the catalog rights. And so then if we're not going to follow the rules of that, they don't renew it, then why do we have those rules there?
No, absolutely. I'm okay with that if Chair Lack considers it a what's it called, friendly amendment?
It's a friendly amendment to modify the language to say students with a continuous enrollment record can, and then retain blah, blah, blah.
That's fine.
Shall, I guess, is the proper term.
Thank you.
Is there any objection to this edit? Seeing no hands raised, we'll go ahead and accept it. And I see no other hands raised, period. So I'm going to ask, can we accept this this motion for this proposed policy change by unanimous consent? Seeing no hands raised in dissent, we'll go ahead and accept it by unanimous consent. Okay, Chair Lack, you may proceed with your other items.
Thank you. Our second action item is similar, but for transfer students. So this change ensures the protection of transfer students' catalog rights per Title V, articulation agreements, impaction criteria, pre-major requirements, and course prerequisites must be honored for continuing students. So the Academic Policy and Planning Committee moves that the Senate adopt the following changes to university policies, academics, transfer students.
Chair Lack, would you like to make a motion?
Sorry, I just did. That was the end of my intro.
Sorry, okay, got it.
Second.
Second. And any deliberation? Anybody have any questions or feedback about this proposed policy change? Seeing no hands raised, can we accept this item by unanimous consent? Seeing no hands, it's accepted by unanimous consent. Please go ahead with your third item, Chair Lai.
Thank you. Okay, our third item is with respect to courses not offered in 2 years undergraduate. Prior to the introduction of Curriculog, deletions to the paper catalog were made as editorial changes by the Office of Curriculum. And each year, about 60 to 80 courses were deactivated, usually in the summer. In addition, all programs served by those courses are also adjusted to reflect course deactivations. However, Curriculog requires a formal course deactivation process to both the course being removed from the catalog, as well as the program modification for each program using that course. Rather than require faculty to enter the deactivation requests and the corresponding program modifications, the Office of Curriculum Assessment and Accreditation, CAA, will manage deactivations and modifications in Curriculog. Specifically, CAA will provide department chairs the list of courses on the 3-year deactivation list as is practice. CAA will deactivate courses and initiate program modifications through Curriculog only after receiving confirmation from chairs that courses should be deactivated. And I should note that this updated policy reflects a new technical process, but it actually isn't really a change in how we do things. It's just a change based on the adoption of Curriculog. And so with that, I'll go ahead and make the motion. APMP moves that the Senate adopt the following changes to university policies, academics, courses not offered in 2 years, undergraduate.
Second.
Thank you. Is there any feedback or deliberation? Seeing none, can we accept this item by unanimous consent? Seeing no hands raised, it is accepted. Please go ahead to item number 4.
Okay, thank you. Our fourth item relates to a curriculum approval process for Imperial Valley. Currently, Imperial Valley is required to go through full curriculum approval process to adopt a mirrored program already approved on the main campus, which slows down the process. And I want to note that I'm talking about programs and not individual courses. Neither our accrediting agency nor the CSU Board of Trustees treats mirrored programs at Imperial Valley as new programming, and thus we are not required to obtain approval from these bodies. Further, all university curriculum committees already include representatives from SDSU Imperial Valley. These proposed changes are intended to make it easier to introduce already approved programs at Imperial Valley without having to go through full curriculum review and approval process. And with that, I'll go ahead and make the motion. APMP moves that the Senate adopt the following changes to academics, SDSU Imperial Valley curriculum and academic policy.
Second.
Thank you. Senator Somé, you're recognized.
I have an information question and I'm not quite sure who may be able to answer that. I'm just curious again what the definition of mirrored programs are once again, because I think we have the same kind of thing going on with maybe SDSU Georgia, or we used to have. And so my question really is, who is doing the programmatic assessment? Is it the given campus or is it in collaboration with the programs from where they are a mirrored program, or how does that work? I just want to know the assessment part of the story, I think. And I don't know who can answer that, maybe AVP McCall. I'm not sure, really.
If you don't mind. A mirrored program, by definition, is the exact same program offered on a different campus. And so the classes have to be the same.
Right.
Exactly the same. The syllabi have to be similar, because we know that not everybody teaches everything the same. The requirements have to be the same. What can be different is the modality of individual classes, but the overall program modality has to be consistent with what was approved on main campus. And so if the program was approved as a face-to-face on main campus through our accrediting agency and through the CO, that's what it has to be. If it was approved as a hybrid program through those two agencies, then which classes are online and which ones aren't can differ between the two campuses. But Ivy could not go over the definition of hybrid that was approved. Does that help, Monica?
Yeah, I just want to know the assessment part of it. Really, that's what my question is. Who is doing the programmatic
assessment of the program? that would be up to the main campus. When we do a mirror program, we just transfer the entire thing.
Yeah, so it's up to the main campus to do the assessment of the mirrored program. Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying that that is a conversation that both parts should have. If you're talking about degree learning outcome assessment or assessment to make sure that it's still mirrored. I guess
No,
that's
it's the program, the learning outcomes that the programmatic, the programmatic assessment that we need to do. I think that's what I'm,
that would be in combination with both programs.
okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Seeing no other hands raised about this particular motion, I'd like to see if we can accept this by unanimous consent. Senator Somay, your hand is still raised. Is that an old hand?
Sorry, it's an old hand. Sorry.
Thank you. Seeing no dissent, we will go ahead and accept this by unanimous consent. Please go ahead, Chair Lack, with item number 5.
Thank you. And at the risk of having everyone get sick of hearing me, this is our last item for this meeting. So this is an action item asking the Senate to approve a new course designation for community engagement courses. The designation would be CE. APMP received a proposal from the Undergraduate Council to update the curriculum guide to address both service learning or SL courses and this new course designation. The proposed changes to the curriculum guide seek to renew SDSU's commitment to service learning while introducing the new CE course designation, and they prepare us for redesignation as a Carnegie classified community engaged university. These changes align with the Chancellor's Office, California's Call to Service initiative. Courses seeking the new CE designation would follow the new minor modifications process approved by the University Senate last November. APMP voted to endorse these changes to the curriculum guide at our January meeting. And originally, I was going to put this forward as an information item, but since there is no existing course designation for community engagement, we seek approval from the Senate to add this as an option in curriculog. And I'll add that Matthew Savage, who's director of the Office of Academic Engagement and the Public Good, I believe he's here and can answer specific questions about SL and CE courses. And with that, I'll go ahead and make the motion. APMP moves that the Senate approve a new course designation for community engagement, or CE, differentiated from the existing service learning or SL designation. Courses seeking CE designation will follow the new minor modification process and should meet the requirements described in the attached updated language to the curriculum guide. And Mario, if you scroll, people will be able to see the actual language for the curriculum guide.
I'll second your motion.
Right.
Okay, Senator Adams, you're recognized.
Thank you. Yes. So after reading this description, I'm still confused over what the difference is between a service learning course and a community engagement course. And I guess my source of my confusion is that service learning courses entail community engagement. So I'm wondering if somebody could maybe try to explain in simple terms what the actual difference is between these two types of courses.
Yeah, I'd be happy to speak to that if it's okay with you, Chair Lack. Hi, everyone. My name is Matthew Savage, and I'm the Director of Academic Community Engagement in Faculty Advancement and Student Success. And this is an office that we've launched this year to make sure that we're supporting service learning initiatives. And your question is a wonderful one. One of the things that we are doing to be in line with Chancellor's Office requirements is to parse out the difference between a CE or community engaged course and an SL or service learning course. A CE course, to try to, I like the way you phrase your question, keep it simple. A CE course would be like you're going on a field trip, you're engaging with an organization, but you're not necessarily designing the course to have a distinct pedagogy of reflection and reciprocity within an organization that's going to be distinctly attached to this, the learning outcomes of the course. So we have procedures in place to support community engaged courses, but the Chancellor's Office and the California Call to Service initiative, which provides much of our funding to support these types of courses, would really like to see us parse out the difference. So one way that we do this is use a tool called the CELT, or the Community Engaged Learning Tool. And when people have proposed SL classes in the past, they're used to this procedure of having their syllabus prepared, they submit it, our office reviews it. In the past, this was chaired by Vinod Sasidharan, and I've taken over since then through different organizations. So what we do is we take a look at the syllabus and we work with each faculty member to determine, is it CE or is it SL? What are your goals for that course designation? What kind of support would you need to be able to teach it, et cetera? So I hope that kind of answers your question while also speaking a little bit to the broader context of what we're trying to do by adding this as an option in Curriculog.
Thank you. With the permission of the chair, I'd like to just follow up really quickly.
Go ahead.
So it sounds like from the way you just described it, that there's a higher standard for a service learning course.
Yes.
Is that is correct. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, that clarifies things then. Now I'm seeing a little bit of a difference. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no other hands. Can we go ahead and accept this motion by unanimous consent? Seeing no dissent, it is accepted by unanimous consent. Thank you, Chair Lack. We now move on to item 6.2, Faculty Affairs Committee. Chair Abel Mills is recognized.
Hi. So we, Faculty Affairs Committee is proposing changes to the difference in pay and sabbatical leave sections of the policy file to add statements where on the applications for a difference in leave pay and for sabbatical, there will be a statement of the amount of time since the last DIP or sabbatical leave. And I would like to move that the Senate accept that policy file change.
Second.
Thank you. Any hands up? David, is your hand up about the election?
Yes, it is. Yeah,
Okay, I'll get back to you in just a minute.
great. Thank you.
I see no other hands. So I'm going to ask if this item can be accepted by unanimous consent. Seeing no dissent, it is accepted. Thank you, Chairman Abel Mills, for your item.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to switch over now to Chair of CCE, Chair Marks, with the elections results.
Okay, thank you, Chair Butler Bird. So ballot number 2, we failed to elect the second committee member with a 51% of the vote. So we will have to run another ballot. I will give you the list. I will give you the voting numbers right now prior to that. So for ballot number 2, Adissa received 12, and there were 58 votes cast. Adissa received 12, Alvin received 6, Choyun received 6, Regina 17, and David 17.
Thank you, Chair Marks.
And I will also put that in the chat as well. So expect a ballot in a few minutes. Again, once you receive the ballot, please just go ahead and click on the link as fast as you can. And we'll try to hopefully get this election completed. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, while we're waiting for that, we will go on to item number 6.3, Staff Faculty Affairs. Chair Rafus is recognized.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. As you can see, this is a change to the policy file for representation to the Senate. As you can read, we're doing just the first reading. It's current Senate bylaws 1.3.2.6, which is under non-voting members of the Senate. Currently it says the president of the university's chapter of the faculty unit collective bargaining agent. We are making a suggested change to state president or designee of every university unit's collective bargaining agent. And you can see the rationale below that. Basically shows the unions on campus that are representing students, staff, and faculty, and that this is the non-voting member, and so it doesn't change any of the voting rights or percentages. It just gives these particular bargaining units the ability to be aware of the agenda, be aware of the beyond the list for the agenda. We can all see the agenda if we want to, but beyond the list and beyond the awareness and beyond the invite of the links and everything for the Senate meeting. And as I know, this will go to the CBL for their review since it is a bylaw change or policy file change. Do I have to make a motion, or is it just a first reading?
Make a motion.
Okay, the Staff Affairs Committee moves the adoption of the
Wait, hold on.
change.
Point of order. This cannot be a motion to approve this policy. This is just a first reading.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay,
No
but
problem.
this is a first reading. It is open for feedback. Thank you, Chair Rafus, for presenting it. I'm seeing no hands up for any additional feedback at this moment.
Thank you very much.
Well, you can move forward and bring it back for a second reading. Thank you very much. We will now move on to item 6.4, Graduate Council. Dean Love is recognized.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. On November 3rd of 2022, the Graduate Council received a request from the director of the School of Speech, Language, and Hearing Sciences to review policy guidance on the hours in preparation for graduate level courses. The Graduate Council met and believes that the reference policy that appears on pages 34 and 35 don't need to differentiate courses at undergrad and graduate levels. The Graduate Council noted that changes to the catalog were made back in 2020 to reflect the Department of Ed, WASC, and CSU definitions of credit hours and units. And in the catalog, there is no distinction between graduate and undergraduate courses. So we believe that by simply removing the word undergraduate from number 1 as shown, will align the policy file to mirror what's already been approved in the definitions of the catalog. So the Graduate Council is requesting the Senate approve this minor edit to the policy file.
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. Are there any comments or feedback? Seeing none, I'd like to request that this item be considered for unanimous consent. Seeing no hands up, it's accepted by unanimous consent. Thank you, Dean Lowe.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay, we will move down to item 6.5, amendment to the tenure track planning policy presented by Senator Pomerenko. You're recognized.
Thank you, Chair Butler-Byrd. So the tenure track planning policy contains a variety of things. If you could scroll down, please, to item 3. But one of the things it contains is the highest fiscal priority of the university, according to the Senate. And that highest fiscal priority is reflected in item 1, scrolling up, as the percentage of probationary and tenured faculty as a percent of the FTEF. So that is the priority of the university. And in our most recent meeting, we changed this policy to align this priority with our values. And so now I propose that we change our actions to align with our priorities and with our values. And if you could scroll to the text of the proposal itself, which is on this page, which has some enforcement to this highest fiscal priority, as you can see before you. So I move that the Senate adopts this change to the tenure track planning policy.
Can I get a second, please?
Second.
Thank you. So the floor is open for deliberation. Can you let me know if you're speaking for or against the amendment? Senator Barboni, you're recognized.
Thanks. Neither for nor against, but a question. When we have the vote, is the vote just about these 3 lines and 1 word that are in red that are on the screen, or is it about the whole thing, starting from history, the word history?
just 3.0 is being amended. The previous was in red only because that had been in red the last time the Senate saw it. Now it is actually part of policy.
Other questions, comments? Seeing none, I'd like to see if we can move this by unanimous consent. Anybody who wants to have a vote taken on this one, please raise your hand now. Seeing none, it's approved by unanimous consent. Thank you, Senator Pomerenko. Okay, now we will move back up to our reports, because that was our last action item. Amanda, I'm going to ask you to please remind me not to forget our information items. Okay, so we're going to now move back up to, let's see, report on the SEC report. I do have a few items. We are seeking one additional Senate representative on the COSN Title IX Review Committee. We did send out a call for nominations. It's still open, but it will close tomorrow. And we really need one more representative to serve on this important committee. In addition to me, I will be serving. The Gender Violence Blue Ribbon Task Force, I will serve on that committee as chair. And I did request an additional rep position, but at this point in time, we're trying to keep the numbers down on that committee at this point. Secretary Fuller, you have a question?
I just, thank you, Chair Butler-Bird. I just wanted to ask, like, what would can you refresh folks' memory what the COSN committee is and what they're going to be working on? Because I think it would help to know the work that they'll be doing, because it is really critical for our campus.
Okay, so as we all know, the COSN O'Connor group has been doing a CSU-wide assessment of Title IX across the CSU. And they did also specific reports for each campus. They're going to have a report for our campus, I guess probably in a matter of days, sometimes later this month. So this committee will get a chance to review that committee as well as meet with members of COSN O'Connor to talk through what the critical issues are. And the committee will also be working on helping to figure out how to implement what the report says. So I know there will be some input into that as well. To be honest with you, I don't know the full range of the commitment, but I know it's a critically important committee that will follow up on this assessment that's been done. I'm sure it will probably have some implications for several other committees. Some of it may be directing some of that particular work to, like, for example, the Gender Violence Blue Ribbon Task Force and other various committees. So that's what it's about. Any other questions? All right, seeing none, I will move on to my next item. I did want to remind everybody that nominations for the statewide ASCSU Academic Senate, those nominations will be coming up. And we do encourage those of you who might be interested in becoming a statewide senator to please put your name in and consider running for that particular office. I know that Chair Marks will be sending that notification out soon. And then finally, SEC and URAD had a philanthropy meeting and luncheon. URAD hosted it. It was on February 21st. We met with VP of URAD, Adrian Vargas, AVP of Development, Mary Darling, and CFO of the Campanile Foundation. 10 SEC members were able to attend. The meeting was the first and what will probably be like an annual gathering to reflect on the missions of URAD and SEC and how they connect, intersect, as well as our points of tension. URAD provided overviews about their various divisions, how they're organized, intersect, and differ from each other. And they also discussed various roles of like the deans, faculty, staff, their budgets, balances, goals, and why people give. So that's the SEC report. Seeing no hands raised with questions, we will move on to Senate Vice Chair report. Vice Chair Vasquez, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chair Butler Bird. Mario, can you? Oh, there we go. Okay, so you can see we've issued a few more oh, thank you. A few more referrals. I believe we got an inquiry from Dean Love regarding something from graduate council. So I'll follow up with you, Dean Love, about that. And just a reminder that you should have access to Trello, which will show you the referrals that are there. I believe it might still need the letter, so I'll look for that for you.
That would be great. I did add a comment in Trello.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'll check that. Are there any other questions?
Secretary Fuller, you're recognized.
Thanks. I just wanted to note that, we tried to capture as much information as we could when we built out the Trello with the existing referrals and information. But some of those letters were hard to recover. Some of them were sent out a while ago. So if you come across a card and you really need the background and the context and it's not there, you can please reach out to us. We're happy to start digging and look more in depth. We obviously couldn't do it for every single referral based on the amount of time we have, but just wanted folks to know that, if you come across one of your referrals and there's not enough information there, please reach out to us for context and we'll do what we can to research that for you.
Thank you. Seeing no other hands raised, we'll move on to item 4.4, the Senate Treasurer Report. Treasurer Sharma, you're recognized.
Thank you. So here you see the Senate expense report, and Senate budget has been submitted, and we are still working on the assigned time report, but some other items are more important, so we'll be bringing it up next month. Thank you.
Any questions or hands raised? Thank you, Treasurer Sharma. We will now move on to the Secretary's report. Secretary Fuller, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chair Butler Bird. Mario, can you please scroll down and show the calendar? So traditionally, this Senate calendar for next academic year used to come out in August. So typically this would be sent out to the listserv and to committee chairs and to other folks across campus who really rely on these submission deadlines and things for different policy changes, et cetera. So we're trying to get feedback and commentary on the dates of this calendar earlier so that we can publish this in May at the end of the year so that the calendar is sort of prepped and ready to go and we're not waiting until August. You'll also note that on this calendar, we try to more clearly express that Tuesdays and Thursdays for Senate meetings are reserved. And we note that if we can complete the Senate business on the Tuesday, the Thursday is canceled by default. And so the only anomaly really from a typical schedule, you'll notice that in the April cycle, the week that we would typically have the SCC meeting was also the week of Passover. And so we have pushed that SEC meeting back a week, especially since it's sort of the last SEC submission cycle of the year and folks tend to get things in. They're trying to get their final meetings in, and we felt like moving it back versus ahead would make more sense to give more people time to get things into SEC and make that final Senate agenda. I'm willing to take questions or feedback on this calendar from the body prior to publishing this formally.
Thank you. Chair Locke, you recognized.
Yes, thank you, Secretary Fuller, for sharing this. It's great to see it so far in advance. My only concern is about the April meeting. I appreciate the rescheduling of it for religious observance. However, that day, I think there are several standing committees that meet at that day. APNP meets the last Tuesday of the month. I feel like URNP maybe does as well. And so I'm concerned that there might be a bit of a scheduling conflict there. I don't know if there are other committees that also meet during Senate time. And so we might need another solution there.
My response to that would be, I would hope that those committees might be able to move their last committee meeting to the week prior, where the Senate meeting usually would be, as just sort of an anomaly.
But then you're asking those committees to have to meet during a religious observance. And so it doesn't really solve for the problem.
Yeah. Well, I think that that's part of the reason we chose to move the date later, is to give people enough time to figure out a way to get things done. I mean, the other option would be to meet and require all submissions be in basically the second week of April, and that would be the last submission period for the year. So I'm open to ideas if you have specific ideas. Otherwise, I guess the assumption would be that the committees would need to work around the Senate calendar.
Is it possible to move that last SEC meeting to that Thursday? As Senator Schellenberg suggests, since we're supposed to hold those Thursdays anyway?
We hold the Thursdays for Senate meetings, and I suppose it's implied we hold them for SEC, I guess. I'm not opposed to moving it to the Thursday, so I guess we'll take that feedback and we'll take this back and look at it again. Thank you so much, Chair Lack.
Secretary Fuller, did you want to do your second item?
Yes, I just wanted to make sure no more. David, your hands for the election, right? Okay. So the second item I have is there was some folks were having issues on how to submit things to SEC to get them onto the Senate agenda. So just to help people understand that process a little better, we went ahead and looking at the Senate homepage. Sorry, let's see. Looking at the Senate homepage, we added a section called proposing items for the Senate agenda. Can you all see this on the screen? Okay, and that section now, instead of having to go to the committee chair guide on the website to get a submission button, we're creating unique buttons for each meeting so that it says, if you want to submit items for April, submit them here. And it'll tell you basically information on the cycle. And so from our homepage, you can now submit items into those using those buttons. You can submit action memos or information memos into the folder to get them added onto the SEC agenda and eventually onto the Senate agenda. Hopefully this just makes it a one-stop. You just go to the Senate website, you can drop your document in, because obviously we can't take submissions through the listserv or other. We'd want to do it in a formal way. And Stephen, I see your hand up. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, this is great. I appreciate it. One thing I might suggest adding, perhaps provide a template for action items and information items, just so it makes it really clear. We're seeing a lot of, it's the kind of diversity I don't necessarily like to celebrate when we have these reports coming in, and sometimes you have to figure out which it is and who submitted it. That might be something useful, unless it's already somewhere. Oh, there it is right there. Look.
Yeah, there's a sample one in there, and then there's a link to that, and it's kind of going to dig in there to get it, but we added.
Okay, I mean, you might just want to put it right next to your little drop
I did.
button.
It is there. It's there.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay, it's a tiny screen. Thank you.
Great suggestion. It's so good. We already did it.
Thank you. All right, seeing no other hands or comments, we will now move on to 4.6, the provost report. Provost Ochoa is recognized. Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot. Let me go back to Chair Marks. Please go ahead and update us on the election.
Thank you, Chair Butler-Byrd. Yeah, since we're gonna have to run another election, I really wanted to get this in as quickly as I can. Ballot 3 failed to elect the second committee member for this search committee. The numbers, there were 59 votes cast. The numbers are Adissa was 11, Alvin was 4, Choyun was 9, Regina was 19, and David was 16. I will be sending out another ballot in just a few minutes. Please, please, please vote as quick as you can. And everyone who is here, please vote. We're not getting the full complement of eligible senators to vote, and we need to get that vote in as fast as possible. Remember, it needs to be 50 plus to elect. And we've been around hovering around 33 for the highest vote getters. Thank you.
All right, Provost Ochoa report. Provost Ochoa is recognized. Well, you're
Can you
muted.
hear me now? Okay. Hello, everyone. Before I begin my report, I would like to have a moment of silence and reflection. We have lost two members of our academic community. Marilyn Newhoff, the former dean of the College of Health and Human Services, passed away this weekend. And faculty member Michael Bono passed away this weekend. So I'd like to have a moment of silence and reflection, if we will, for a minute. Thank you. When you put that in context, I think our work is important, but as we lose people of our community, it's important to take time to recognize them. I'm going to give my report real brief today, and then I have two major items that I'd like to present to bring the faculty. I think it's very important the Senate become aware of. First of all, we do have 3 finalists for the PSFA Dean that are here. We had the first candidate today. We'll have another one tomorrow and one next week. And we will announce later today, if it hasn't gone out already, the 4 finalists for the Global Campus Dean, and they will be here next week and the week thereafter. So we are making progress on those searches. Regarding searches, we are in the midst of hiring faculty. And we had 60 faculty searches. We've only had 1 failed search and 15 that have already been filled. I'm getting approvals negotiated every day. I think we'll make substantial progress in the next 2 weeks. And I want to thank everyone who has worked very hard on that. We have 3 deans that are being reviewed. And I want to thank NOLA and Mark and Pamela Lack and others of the Senate who've worked with us to come up with a uniform dean survey that they can add 5 items to each college. And the 2 of the 3 panels have already been, review panels have been paneled already, and they've met. And we anticipate that those review process, the surveys will start going out next week, at the very latest the week after next. So I want to thank those people who are willing to serve on the dean panel reviews, and we're making substantial progress on that. This year, I have over 90 promotion and tenure reviews. I've already completed all my 3rd-year reviews, and I want to make sure that all faculty in their 3rd year who had unanimous approvals up to this point got feedback. So they have gotten those, and I'm busily working on completing the others. I say it's a lot of work, but it's also a lot of joy. When we look at what our faculty are accomplishing, I'm simply literally amazed. Speaking of faculty, I've notified NOLA, and we will be expanding the tenure track planning committee this year. On April 5th, we will have a faculty hiring retreat where every dean will present a request for their lines in front of all the other deans, AVPs, and the Senate officers and the tenure track planning committee, and everyone will have a vote in shared governance to provide a recommendation to me. We're starting early this year because that was requested, with the understanding that we'll get some late resignations and FERPs. So therefore, we'll make some adjustments as we go along. But I want to thank NOLA, and we're going to have more voice at the Senate. It says we have to consult. It's more than consultation. They participate in that process. So I just wanted to make sure that everybody's aware of that. There are 2 very critical things that are very, very important for us that are coming that I think will greatly impact the way we do our work. And I want to spend the majority of time so people are fully informed. And one of them is AB 928. And AB 928 not only talks about having a uniform general ed core, which we're waiting to see the outcome of. It also has a requirement about a compact agreement between us and community colleges. And I would like for Madhavi to present this because this has huge implications for our college, and I want everybody to be aware. I've asked Madhavi and Stefan's here as well, to meet with every college and leadership so they can make important decisions about this compact agreement. And it's very important that every college look at that because that can greatly impact our enrollment. And then secondly, after that is done, I will turn over the floor to Stefan. We in the CSU are in a very critical point with a loss of enrollment, significant, that will have profound implications on us. Well, we don't have that perspective. What happens in other campuses really affects us. And I've asked Stefan, in a spirit of transparency, to provide a very important context that's going to be affecting us with the enrollment cliff in California and what is happening in other campuses that could impact us. This has significant implications for the Senate. And I felt that I thank you, Nola, for allowing us this time, but I really want to make sure that the Senate is aware of both of these very, very critical factors. So Mariby, I will let you start, and then Stefan, you can chime in and what we're needing by the end of the month. And then Stefan, I will ask you to do a very important report so that we can have some very important discussions about what's going to impacting us and what that means for us. So Nola, I yield those two, but I think that's very important information. So Mariby, if you will.
Thank you, Hector, but I think Stefan was going to take both of them this time.
Okay, that's fine. Stefan, I'll let you do that. I thought you were going to do together, but that's fine. Go ahead, Stefan.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Absolutely, Madhavi, please feel free to chime in on anything related to AB 928. So as the provost mentioned, most focus up until now really within the Senate, and I would say it more widely throughout California academia, is really focused on the common GE sequence that is going to be required in the coming years. And really, this is, at least in the eyes of the Act itself, a means to an end. The common GE pattern is meant to standardize and make the transfer experience more seamless for students so that students are taking the same general education curriculum, no matter if they're starting at a community college and then transferring into either a UC or a CSU campus. The actual name of the bill, AB 928, is Student Transfer Achievement Reform Act. So it's in the title. As the provost mentioned, the bill also requires all four-year campuses to participate in new transfer guaranteed admissions pathways. And this actually is going to get started with the cohort of students entering California community colleges in fall 2023, who would then be arriving at a four-year campus 2 years later in fall 2025. So not that far away. The UC system a few months ago actually came up with a brand for their version of the program. They're actually called the Second Chance Program. You can find articles about that. In some ways, they marketed it as a great new program available for students who have been denied admission as a first-year student, when in fact, actually, the Act actually requires them to do this. The CSU is also centralizing the process. They are calling the initiative across the system Transfer Success Pathways, or TSP, and they have been developing really since November transfer planner software, which is going to serve as a hub for students to sign up for a 2+2 agreement, as well as get information about transfer course equivalencies. The transfer planner is expected to go live at the end of May, and then the application process for students to create an agreement with just one four-year campus, they can only have an agreement with only one campus, is expected to take place in the months of August and September. Campus reps were invited in the CSU to begin testing the planner a couple of weeks ago, and the system has just recently, in the last 2 weeks, unveiled some new guidelines that I wanted to share with everyone. First, all campuses in the CSU are required to participate. However, each campus can determine the number of programs that will be available, which programs will be available, and set caps for the number of students who can sign up for each program. Campuses can also determine the admissions parameters by program and also have different minimum GPA requirements for students from the local service area as opposed to more broadly. And that's actually one of the concerns that we've heard from our local community college friends, that they are concerned about their students being squeezed out because of the demand for an SDSU education from Central and Northern California. So something that we may be considering. There are a number of logistical challenges that I think we're trying to work through, a lot having to do with transfer articulation. For most of our majors, a student who's enrolling at one of our local community colleges is going to find a really complete set of course equivalencies. And that's after many years of partnerships between their faculty and our faculty. Some exceptions, but by and large, students have that ability to complete major preparation. We do not have these equivalencies identified at every community college, however, in the state of California. And I think that's going to pose one of those general challenges there in terms of ensuring that we're allowing students a reasonable pathway to actually be able to gain admission, not just sign a contract. We're working with Curriculum Services, thank you, Madhavi, and also Alicia Choi, on building our transfer articulation rules and trying to broaden them and trying to really capture some of our more common gateway classes that we know students across many different majors are generally taking. And as the provost mentioned, speaking with the colleges, starting this week, actually, a couple of meetings have actually already happened about next steps as far as identifying programs that would be a part of this. And the Chancellor's Office has indicated that they will ask for a list of programs and parameters sometime in March. It is March. We have not been given a firm deadline yet. And so trying to work quickly on this, and happy to answer any questions that anyone might have.
Senator Shomel, you're recognized.
Thank you. So my understanding is that there are currently two pathways, right? One is for transfer students, whereby 6 units of GE had been cut from 39 to 36. And there's the other pathway that are native students who come as freshmen. They still have those extra 6 units. So is this mitigated somehow on our campus? And if so, how? And I also wanted to let you all know that I'm heavily involved in the discussions from the faculty side on this. I am not on IGETC, which is the intersegmental academic senates, which is community colleges, CSU, and UC, but I am a representative of a subcommittee. So if anybody has any questions on where faculty stands on this in the system, I can tell you more about that. But I just wanted to know how our campus will mitigate this kind of discrepancy right now between the two systems. And do you expect that that will change maybe fairly soon?
So that one I think falls probably a little bit more to Madhavi's court
Yes.
than my own in terms of curriculum. So I'll defer to Madhavi on that.
Hi there. As far as we know, the CSU is going to come up with one set of rules dealing with the exact question you're asking.
Okay.
6 months ago, if you would have asked me, I would have said the CSU is leaning towards one pathway for incoming students and transfer students. But then, as you may or may not know, the proponent of that, Allison Wren, took
Yes.
another job. And so I think
Yes.
the conversation is still continuing as to whether or not it will be one pathway or two pathways. I should know more in 3 weeks. There's a meeting
Okay.
with AVPs, and I think we'll get an update then. But
Okay,
at
great.
the moment, there isn't a decision on the part of the CSU as to whether or not it will be one or two pathways.
And that's what we're kind of working on, to be honest, from the faculty side. So if anybody has any input or any questions to me on that, please contact me. Thank you.
Senator Schellenberg, you're recognized.
Yeah, I think this goes from a specific from Anacode, from a general with Anacode to a specific regarding have you read the tea leaves, so to speak, regarding Area E within the GE? Is there any discussion around that? And so either Stefan or Aniko, it sounds like there are two perspectives with two sources. I'm just looking for one truth with a capital T. So whatever you could share, it looks like it's going to be useful. Thanks.
Want me to take that?
Yeah. And I'll
So
take the second word. Yeah.
The recommendation came down in May. It's just a recommendation. They're still working through it. That 3 units of social sciences be dropped and Area E be dropped from the lower division. The recommendation was that if the CSU wants to keep it, they should move it to the upper division. My understanding is that the CSU, that would be moving Area E to the upper division, would then put more pressure on our high unit majors. And so I'm not sure that's being strongly considered, but that was the recommendation from the committee, is that Area E be dropped from the lower division. If the CSU wants to keep it, it needs to be an upper division class.
And so my intake on that is that there is incredible pressure from the community colleges that it stays in the lower division and not in the upper division. I just received 400 email messages from different CSU campuses, from students, faculty, and everybody not to move that to the upper division. So that's where the dialogue is. There is no truth yet, Stephen. I'm sorry, but hopefully it will come sometime.
Nola, well,
just a comment. There are a number of campuses that run their first year seminars as Area E, and they're up to like 3 units. So I'm sure they're shaking in their boots. I know they are. Okay, thank you. Thanks, Madhavi.
And as we look, I know that part of AB 920 is very important. The other part that faculty, as we said, is that we're going to have to decide whether, for example, finance for example, the Department of Finance say, we're going to accept every major that anybody from any community college says, if I meet the certain GPA, I'm automatically admitted if I have the certain GPA 2 years after I graduate from, or when I graduate from community college. And should, for example, the Department of Finance say, no, we don't want to participate, or we will participate, but we will only, our regional will have to have a 3-something GPA, or out of region will have to have a certain GPA, because we need to have those discussions because it affects how many freshmen we take. So all these need to be discussed, and I know that Stefan and Madhavi are the experts in this area. So I just wanted to make sure that every program will have to discuss this with their dean and what implications this has for that. And I just want to make sure that everybody's aware of that. The second thing that I think is very important that maybe we're a little more immune to at San Diego State compared to our sister campuses is what is coming down the pike and will have huge implications for us. And many people say, well, how do we do, how do we compare? And Stefan has a very enlightening presentation, and if he can get screen share, I'd like for him to go over this information because I think it has significant implications. And I think this is extremely important the Senate be aware of. So Stefan, if you could begin, please, I'd be most appreciative.
Sure, absolutely. Let me also say that for those of you who don't already know, I speak very quickly. So my apologies on that. I know that we're also short on time. I will make all these slides available to everyone. This is a
just a minute, because we have an election now come. If we could find out. I finished it and then we'll come right back to.
Absolutely.
Please go ahead, Chair Marks.
You're muted, David.
Oh, sorry. I've been trying to go back and forth to try to figure out. Okay, somebody say something to me?
No, do you have the results of the
Yeah,
election?
I do. Yeah. I was just trying to get to it. I'm jumping between my phone to confirm the vote totals and you guys. So it's a little hectic. Okay. Yes, I do. Okay. So the election is unfortunately we failed to elect. I will give you the numbers. I'll also put them in the chat in just a second, right after I email the fifth ballot to everyone. But let me give you the numbers. I'll list the number. I'll read the numbers to everyone right now. So we had 67 ballots cast. Adissa received 8, Alvin 3, Choyun 5, Regina 33, Camper 18, or David Camper 18. You needed 34 to elect. So Regina was the closest at 33. So that's the vote total. I'll put that in chat. I am going to be sending you another ballot in just about a minute or two. So please vote as soon as you possibly can, so we can call this election. Thank you.
Point of information, David.
Yes.
So is it a certain percentage of the casted votes or
Correct.
the membership? Okay,
Correct.
great. Thank you.
Exactly. You got it. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, please, Stefan.
Absolutely. And thank you again for your time. Quick summary of our overall enrollment, and this is going back to full university enrollment to 1986. We were actually at this past fall semester at record enrollment for the university. In 125 years, we had never hit 36,637 students on the state side in total. You will, however, notice that we've been pretty close to this number at 2 points in the past, both in 1987, 36,280, and back in 2007, 36,559. What happened after those times? Well, the economy of California, the economy of the United States does a lot to ultimately dictate what kind of trends happen with our enrollment. You will notice right at the very bottom, recession, a year or two later, our enrollment tends to dip. Recession, same story. Great Recession, same story. Actually dipped pretty far down in a pretty concise period. Only time this didn't happen, the COVID-19 recession, which was a 2-month period. So something of broad context to keep in mind, that there are external variables that certainly impact our state funding, plays into our overall enrollment levels. This was led by a record-sized first-year class this year, 6,514 first-year students. If we look at the quality, the makeup of that class, it was also the highest achieving by a cum GPA in university history, 3.9, 61% female, 39% male, 60-40 has historically tended to be generally the average. 1918 service area students, you'll see this on the next chart as I break this down, 28% first gen, 49 US states plus DC represented. If anyone knows anyone in West Virginia, we're recruiting, and 20 other US nations also represented. All the information in terms of the ethnic breakdown, the academic units of these students can be found on the ACER website. And again, I'll make the slides available. As I mentioned, with our local first-year students, our local service area is considered San Diego County south of Route 56, as well as Imperial County. 1918 appears to be a new high for the university in terms of the largest number of service area students. And I broke this down by the school districts that they're coming from. A small portion of students who come from other school districts or private schools within the San Diego area, but we really had growth year over year at every school district in the San Diego area. Transfer student enrollment was strong, third largest class at about 3,900 students, not quite as large as fall 2020. Fall 2020, we went very deep into our pool to mitigate some enrollment potential losses having to do with COVID. Transfer students equally as impressive, 3.4 cum GPA, a little bit closer to a 50-50 split, plus 22 non-binary students. 66% service area students, about 2/3 of our transfers are from San Diego County, 41% first generation, and about 1,400 of the students were coming to us from an associate degree for transfer program. And again, I'll make these available. New graduate students came in at about 2,200 in total. As you can see the breakdown here between in red, post-baccalaureate students, master's students, doctoral students, and then small numbers of transitory students. Graduate enrollment, you can see, has generally over the last 10 years or so been pretty flat overall, kind of all right around that 2,200 number. One peak that took place in fall 2021. So how do we compare and benchmark against other CSU campuses? Well, we stand out quite a bit. This is CSU total fall enrollment by campus going back to fall 2017, all fall 2022 data, and you can see the 1-year difference here and the 5-year difference. In 1 year, the CSU has lost 19,474 students. Now, this did not all happen in 1 year, however. Some of this is year over year losses at particularly some of the campuses in Northern California that have been losing demographics. Also losses of continuing students that took place at many campuses when COVID first started. So while this really first showed up this year in terms of the largest loss, in fact, with our first-time freshman enrollment and transfer enrollment across the entire system, the symptoms were actually there going back to 2020, if not a little bit earlier. We're the only campus, there were one of only 3 campuses that actually grew this year, and Humboldt grew by 119 students, San Bernardino by 285, and then us by 905. So by obviously a much more significant margin. Also, if we go back a longer period, we've also grown by the largest amount over a longer period of 1,800 students. If we look at FTES, really measuring not just enrolled heads, but how many credits are our students taking, we're actually at the top of the system right now in terms of number of FTES overall. Pretty comparable year over year growth. We're up 905 heads, 862 here FTES. And again, it's we're part of Slim Company. After us, it's simply San Bernardino up 89 and everybody else down. So clear challenges in the CSU system. Preparing for the enrollment cliff. This was discussed at the last Senate meeting. Wanted to provide just a couple of slides on this. There's a much broader data set that I'm happy to share with anybody interested. I sometimes call the enrollment cliff the enrollment slope because if you take a look at what is projected here in blue right up over here, you can see that it's not necessarily a draconian drop. What will be happening across the entire nation is we will be, at least based on the forecast, declining, reaching our peak in fall 2025 in terms of number of high school graduates. And that'll be falling back down to about 3.52 million high school graduates by 2037. When was the last time we were in a range of 3.52 million? It's actually right back here, right around 2015. So we have been here before in some ways, but I also don't want to trivialize that simply the loss of high school graduates is the only issue that's happening. 2 sources that I would strongly recommend, lots of data that can be found on the WICHE website, Knocking at the College Door, which is the Western Interstate Commission of Higher Education, great data sets broken down by state and counties. Also a great book by Nathan Graz, a professor at Carleton College, Demographics and the Demand for Higher Education, which came out pre-COVID. 2 quotes here. Nationally, number of high school graduates is expected to peak in the mid-2020s before entering this slope that will take place through 2030, 2037. And then what we really don't know is we can't discount how COVID-19 has impacted and potentially exacerbated some of the trends that you're going to see. What is causing this decrease in the number of high school graduates? Of course, the leading cause is the decreased birth rates, which was spoken about at the last Senate meeting. This really started right when the Great Recession hit, actually a year earlier in California, but it's also been being impacted by other trends like interstate migration patterns. We know that California has lost and became more of an export state just in the last year with a lot of relocation, particularly out of the Bay Area. To places like Austin, Texas. Also, there are concerns in terms of how demographic changes may decrease college-going rates of high school graduates because the demographics that are remaining have historically attended college at lower rates and have gone further away from home when attending college. All things that we're trying to just better understand. Some of the data that we've been looking at, again, this is a source of Wiki. There are 10 US states, top 10 states over here that actually produce 56% of US total college enrollment. And what you will see all the way in the farthest most right column are the projections of losses overall. California down by 16%, almost leading the way with the exception of Illinois, which has actually already started some of its decline more recently. The Midwest is already hurting. You can really see this across the board. We're not talking about losses in most states of 50% of students, but significant enough, I think, losses for us to be really very intentional about seeing what's coming. If we look within San Diego County, it looks like based on the forecasts from the California Department of Finance, looks like we're going to peak in terms of high school graduates a year earlier than the national cliff takes place. That's going to be with the class of 2024. We're probably looking at a record applicant pool next year. And then we start to see this slope take place with the class of 2025. And then really the biggest loss coming between 2025 and 2026 with those almost 1,500 less high school graduates projected. Nathan Grau, who I mentioned, came up with a second book post-COVID called The Agile College, How Institutions Successfully Navigate Demographic Changes. And in it, he tries to make projections as to which colleges and universities from which areas of the country does he think will ultimately be the winners or the losers, so to speak, in terms of their enrollment patterns, which is to say that the highly selective colleges, by and large, in most areas, with the exception of the Northeast, are expected to continue to do very well because they have a lot of depth and pool when it comes to admissions. And in particular in the West in general, the South and the Western states are not expected to see as harsh of a demographic drop overall as what is expected in the Midwest and the Northeast. He's defining four-year elite colleges as top 50 on the US News and World Report list, four-year national colleges as top 100, four-year regional colleges as every other four-year college, and then two-year colleges, of course, being community colleges. And here we really see, based on this forecast, community colleges really bearing the brunt of the decreases. So a few considerations, and I promise I will stop talking. High school graduation rates are perhaps not as dire as they were once projected, but they may be compounded by decreases in college going rates, which started during COVID. Midwest and Northeast are going to face the most significant declines, while the South and West will be less severe. Future classes are going to be increasingly diverse, with growth in Hispanic population leading the way. The impact will be unevenly absorbed across higher education, really exacerbating some have and have-nots. Some things that certainly across the literature and in my own mind, I think we're already considering: how do we increase college going rates? How do we prioritize retention to ensure that we're not losing continuing students, which is something that we're doing very well here. Become a more agile campus and system in terms of our ability to be responsive to the needs of students across any number of different areas. Re-examine admissions eligibility, embrace a more diverse campus, address college affordability, keep college affordable, expand the pool of learners, long-term recruitment and outreach, which is to say that within my own enrollment services area, I really want to be talking now to 9th and 10th graders so that they already have SDSU on their list, and remove administrative barriers. A couple of potential challenges ahead: transfer students. I mean, if community colleges are going to bear the brunt of the losses as is forecasted, that's potentially going to lead to smaller transfer applicant pools a couple of years from now. And in fact, we're kind of already feeling that. CSU resource allocation, there's just uneven demand, as you saw across the CSU system, with application demand and enrollments. Non-resident enrollment, some of the forecasts are for decreasing number of high school graduates in some of the top feeder states, which provide the students who go out of state overall. The focus on outcomes, which I think has already really, since the Great Recession, changed the changed to a greater focus on ROI and changed some of the decision-making that's being made by students, like which majors do I pursue? And then, of course, everybody wants growth. Everybody is trying to position for additional growth while there are less heads to ultimately enroll. With that, and then I promise I'm coming to an end, some of the things that we're looking at here, how have our enrollment patterns ultimately changed? And we currently offer 97 undergraduate majors, excluding undeclared athletic training, which is suspended for new students in dance. 12 programs encumber 50% of undergraduate first majors. And you can see those are listed right there. 25 programs encumber 72% of our undergraduate majors. 54 programs encumber less than 10% of undergraduate majors, and 21 programs have a total enrollment of under 25 students, including one program with 0 enrolled majors. And you can see how they break down. This is not an SDSU issue, and I did want to just simply share the humanities crisis is well known, well documented. I sometimes think universities need a degree in the humanities crisis because the term has been thrown around just so much in so ways that at the same time, I strongly believe that there is immense value for the humanities. And when we think about many of the fields that are likely to drive R&D in the 21st century, they're going to have core issues that are at the heart of the humanities, policy implications for AI, levels of regulation for biotech, surveillance technology versus rights to privacy, value-sensitive design. And I wanted to give one example just to close of some of the ways that some of our peers that are also feeling some of these same pressure points are trying to really rethink their curricula in ways to meet students where they are and what they're looking for. University of Illinois a couple of years ago came up with an idea of an interdisciplinary set of degree programs, computer science plus X, in which students are taking foundational computer science courses and then aligning it with an area generally in the humanities and social sciences fields. And these are their actual enrollments from their institutional research website. Computer science plus economics, 156 students, linguistics, 103 students. Not all programs doing well, but a lot of them are doing very, very well. This is not to say that I'm encouraging us to go in the direction of CS plus X, just that I think we need to be thinking a little bit creatively and outside the box in terms of how to deal with some of the shifts in major of interest that have really been happening ever since the Great Recession. And with that, last slide. We know that based on what has been going on the enrollment and the uneven demand for a CSU education, that the CSU has introduced in the last couple of months a new reallocation system. These are quotes directly from a CalMatters article that summarizes it: enroll more students or lose money. What this essentially means is that starting 2 years from now, campuses that this coming year are 10% or below their targets are going to lose up to 5% of their state funding, and that is going to be reallocated to the campuses that are meeting or exceeding their targets. That will change from 10% down to 7% in the following year, and then 5% until ultimately the CSU has right-sized the amount of state dollars going towards enrollment. And with that, I thank you very much for listening to me ramble for the last few minutes, and I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone might have.
So basically what we wanted to do before we take questions, Nola, is in the last slide that Stefan showed, is that campuses who don't meet the enrollment, they still keep their funding from the CSU. And since we're growing so much, if we meet our targets, then the money from the other campuses that did not meet their 10% enrollment target will be shifted to those campuses that are having enrollment growth to support that growth. So it's going to be very, very critical as we look at enrollment. Stefan has done an incredible job. I think we predicted like 34,000 head count, and we're like only 11 out, at least less than like 0.1% off. But when we work on enrollment targets, if we meet and exceed those targets, the thing is that the chancellor's office, those things are going to change. And if we exceed, then we're going to get more money, but that money's not coming from the state. It will come from other campuses that are not needing that money to come to us. And so as we look at this enrollment clip, because if you look at the data that Stefan put for the whole system, we seem to be going a whole different direction. And I hear faculty we're very stressed. We're doing that. Well, now I think this will be some relief for us if we can sustain that growth and we meet our enrollment targets. And those campuses they're not meeting that money will be shifted, which causes a lot of concern from those other campuses. But it'll help us in academic affairs because we'll have more resources to deal with what we need to achieve. And so generally time, we're so connected with the other campuses that we really need to look at that. That's why when we talk about AB 928, about which ones you want to have your pathways and guarantee a contract to come in, has huge implications all over the place. So I just want you to know that sometimes we just look at us, but in many ways we're connected to our 22 sister campuses. And if we continue on the good work that we've done so far, and I really want to thank the, Explore SDSU coming up on the 15th is very critical. We're bucking the national trends. And when I talk to dean candidates and they talk about their campuses, about how they're dealing with enrollment loss, what are they going to do? They're kind of shocked that they say, but you're so different. So I just want to, as we work together, I wanted the Senate to be aware that if we continue on these good successes, and, I don't want to speak ill of our sister campuses, but we could get those extra funds. And I just want everybody to be aware of what that means for them and what that means for us. So Stefan's here and Madhavi and I are here to answer questions. We may not have all the answers, but no, I think how we do that is important. Thank you for the time.
Okay, so can everybody hear me? Okay, so we have 5 minutes left for this meeting. Either we're gonna have to get a motion to extend it, or we're gonna have to adjourn and then bring this back at the next meeting. But I think this presentation was critical, and I think it would be fabulous for us to post this on the Senate website and to review this, and perhaps even have a town hall or something like that where we can discuss these issues in more depth. I know I see 3 hands up, but we're really kind of out of time. So I need to have either a motion to extend the meeting or not to.
I move to extend for 10 minutes.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Objections?
I object. Allison.
Allison, okay, so we'll go ahead and hold the vote. If you want to extend the meeting by 10 minutes, please click the green icon. If you want it to end, click the red, and raise your hand if you abstain.
Motion passes 28 yes, 17 no.
Thank you. We will extend this meeting by 10 minutes. So please go ahead. I did want to defer to Chair Mark so that he can give us the results of the election.
Okay, thank you, Chair Butler-Bird. Can everyone hear me okay? I guess, yes. Sorry, I'm trying to jump between different computers, but it looks like everyone can hear me. Okay. All right, so the results are in. So we can congratulate Regina Brandon for being the second member to be elected to the VP for Student Affairs and Campus Diversity. The vote totals where we had a total of 62 votes. Adissa received 1, Alvin received 2, Choyun received 1, Regina 47, and David 11. Thank you, everyone. I will post those totals in the chat. And I noticed that our resident mathematician noticed that the things didn't add up before. It's because votes were trickling in as I was writing things down. So I will do my best to be as accurate as possible at the time I type in the results. Thank you.
Okay, so the other thing is we have several items that we didn't get to, reports that are important. So we do have our Thursday meeting time slot, which we can have those items presented at. So please plan on holding your calendar for that, as well as our information items. So Senator Sommer, you have a question?
Just a quick question to Provost Ochoa. There's another legislative intrusion happening, which is AB 927, allowing community colleges now to offer BA degrees as well. Are we worried about our enrollment in terms of those BA degrees? I know they're not supposed to be the same as us, but there have been cases where, actually one case in particular, that they are the same as ours. And so I'm kind of foreseeing that that's going to happen more and more. So are we worried about that or not yet? Maybe in 10 years' time?
Yes, we have Montevi's work very closely when we get those letters that we refer them back to the system. We're not going to be dealing with those on a campus level. We're doing them with the system level.
Okay,
The system is being very assertive that we not negotiate and they look at the impact because that's very, very critical.
right.
It could be affect others because when people don't have the numbers, they want to get those numbers and getting a 4-year. And we're monitoring that very carefully, Montevi, and every time we get that request and people, as Montevi's told the deans, if any of your faculty say, are you okay with this? We always say we don't deal with this on a campus level. We deal with this at a system level, and the system is being very aggressive to make sure that there's not, well, I think they've been for the most part, and they're being.
Yes. Okay. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Hope that helps.
Okay, I just wanted to announce to you that unfortunately, the Mission Valley staff will not be available this
Oh, well,
Thursday.
let's do that. Yeah.
And that's an important item. So I just wanted to give you a heads up. We cannot do it
Jill,
today.
if Jill emails me and Stefan, we can respond to her question, but I'd like to go on because I know that that's critical. Thank you, Nola. Jill, please email and then we'll be responding. Thank you.
That's critical, but we only have 10 minutes and I highly doubt that that's going to be enough time for us to cover the Mission Valley report and have quick Q&A as well. So we're going to have to get back to you about setting up another time to have that on our agenda, but please, at this point, everyone hold Thursday to cover the other items because I know our VP of Information Technology also did not get to give his update, and that's important too. All right, so are you sure, Provost Ochoa, you don't want to go ahead and let a couple of folks have those final questions?
That's fine if that's what you'd like to do. We're here to help clarify. And
We now have 10 minutes.
Jill, I don't know if you're still here. You can feel free to ask your question. I just wanted to make sure we're sensitive. How can we be?
Okay, well, I just had a quick question. That was a really interesting presentation about future predictions of future enrollment. I was curious if the decline in enrollment that's predicted for undergrads is also predicted for graduate students. And I'm wondering if the graduate student enrollment here at SDSU here has enough students to influence the numbers, the total numbers.
Stefan, would you like to take that?
That's a great question. I have not seen a single study yet looking at forecasts for graduate education. I think we've got a little bit of a longer runway there, noting that we're still going to be hitting that national peak 2025, 2026 range in terms of high school graduates. So we're probably pushing the issue out a little bit closer to the 2030 decade, but probably something that we should be mindful of. And perhaps as we get to 2026, 2027 and see exactly how much that real first steep year of that decline actually matches what some of these projections are showing, it'll give us a better sense as to what's coming 4 or 5 years later. I will keep an eye out and just see if I can find any studies that actually try to forecast that, but thank you for the question.
You're not seeing any other hands up at this point in time. So can I get a motion to, no, we're not gonna adjourn if we're gonna possibly meet on Thursday. So we're gonna end the meeting at this point in time. We're gonna recess the meeting and we will see you all on Thursday.
No, I have a question.
Yes, Secretary Fuller?
Yeah, sorry. So are there options in terms of how we handle these items? Does the Senate vote on whether to continue to Thursday or to move these reports to the next meeting?
At this point in time, because we only have about 2 minutes left, well, we have a few more minutes than that. I think it would be wise for Senate officers to regroup. And I've asked everybody already to please hold Thursday since that's our date, and we'll get back in touch with them and then probably tomorrow to confirm.
Okay.
All right, so let's recess. Thank you all very much. And again, want to thank the Imperial Valley campus for hosting us for this wonderful meeting. We really appreciate all you did to welcome us. Thank you, everybody. See you probably on Thursday. Thank you. And so we're going to go ahead. We have just a couple of reports, but we also have two information items. Item 7.1, which is the undergraduate council report, and 7.2, the philanthropy report. And I wanted to ask if we could get a motion to approve those two, to approve the acceptance of those two items by unanimous consent.
Motion.
Thank you. And a second?
Second.
Thank you very much. Is there any dissent? If you could raise your hand. Seeing none, the items have been accepted by unanimous consent. And so we'd like to take up the provost report, especially the report that was shared having to do with the enrollment. We didn't have time for Q&A, and so we wanted to start with that, followed by 250 time certain for VPIT Sheehan's report. So let's go ahead and proceed with that. And let me see, is Stefan here?
Yes, we're here. Stefan and I are here.
Okay, thank you. So the report, the PowerPoint was forwarded to you a couple of hours ago. I don't know if you had a chance to look at it, but it might also be good if we could share that. So Mario, do you have access to it, or Stefan, can you share it? And I see one hand up, and that's Senator Schellenberg. You're recognized.
Good afternoon, everyone. I just had a quick question. This might be in the link that you drew the data from, Stefan, but are there percentages? I was curious. Those are absolute numbers, right? So percentage wise, is that, I mean, obviously I know how to calculate a percentage, right? But is that data readily accessible? I'm just curious about percent changes given the really variable sizes of the different institutions, or do you see any real outliers? They all kind of down the same percentage?
Yeah. Oh, you're talking about the CSU.
The enrollment, yeah, enrollment FTE.
Those are actuals. And yes, I'm happy to share. There's a CSU enrollment dashboard. I formatted this in a little bit more of a readable fashion, but you can actually go back 20 years if you'd like on that dashboard. It can also break it down by different demographics.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions? I know one question. Okay, thank you. Senator Adderton, you're recognized.
Thank you. Thank you, Stefan, for that report that you presented on Tuesday. I thought it was really good. Slide 5 shows that SDSU now enrolls roughly 6 women for every 4 men. And this is, I think, the largest female-male gender gap in the history of the university, and it appears to be getting wider each year. And I think this imbalance is stunning to me. Can we turn to slide 19 and 20? There's something I want to draw attention to. So slide 19, it shows that less than half of the population of males is graduating in 4 years, right? Whereas almost 2/3 of the population of females is graduating in 4 years. But the slide says the equity gaps have been gradually closing. But that doesn't seem to be true for men and women, because slide 20, if the next slide there, shows that there has been a decline in transfer graduation rates for men since 2014. So my question, which I guess is, I'm not sure who I'm really addressing, possibly the provost, is simple, though I don't think I've ever heard this question addressed before, it's certainly not in the Senate, is what is SDSU doing about the gender gap? And how does it propose to increase graduation rates for men and close the equity gap? And what is it doing to increase the growth of man enrollment at this very moment? Thank you.
Peter, that's a good question. And what we have done in order to look at, to really target, because the GI 2025 does not look at gender. But what we have done is working through Jeannie Stronach's and Dr. Jacobs' help, we provide a college insight report to every college by major and department. And if there are significant gender gaps in performance in courses or graduation rates, we bring that to the attention of the dean and those administrators. And they now have, every college is doing a unique intervention plan that deals with what the data shows as glaring disparities. And we did find some things in gender, and Joanna has really taken a very strong focus in that area. And we did find, for example, in some classes we found one demographics is, why is it that first gen students are failing this class maybe 2 to 1 compared to non-first gen? What do we need to do? So we have looked at where those discrepancies occur, whether it's by gender, by underrepresented first gen, commuter, Pell, and brought those to the attention. So there is a Cal College Insight Plan. I don't know if you've seen it, but we prepared that that has been given to your dean. If you talk to Ronnie, she can share that with you. And they were supposed to visit with their respective teams and chairs and school directors to go over that and develop a plan. We also have, in terms of keeping those students here, Peter, each college has done a retention plan and to help with the retention rates with given demographics. And one thing that we have done because of that, people leaving, especially with COVID, we did a re-enrollment campaign where we have brought back 85 students. And by this semester, 80 of those 85 are expected to graduate, but we had to go back and bring them back. And if you can see, that's a big factor for men. So we can do that. And we've monitored those, and Joanna's team has done an excellent job in really looking at bringing those people back in order, because what we do is that once they leave, they're gone. Well, now we're calling them back up and see what we can do. And a lot of those were within 1 semester of graduation, which will impact the gender issue that you're talking about. But I would encourage you, if you reach out to Ronnie, we've done the last 2 years and we're looking at trends. So that is there, and you can look for your particular unit or area, but there were striking gender differences in some areas. Hope that helps, but we brought that.
It does. Thank you very much. That's
you're welcome.
Full response. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I think also though, Stefan, if you can speak to the comment that you made in the chat.
Sure, absolutely. So Senator Adams mentioned that this is a national challenge, which it most certainly is. There's a national gender gap in terms of graduation rates. A couple of schools have created centers for men and masculinity, centers or staffing units that are somewhat designed to try to understand what are the issues that are actually driving this nationwide trend, what's going on with the men. We did a little bit of this at my previous institution where we actually partnered with some gender faculty members to try to do focus groups, to try to just kind of dig into what are some of the general themes that come up. The one thing that I just wanted to mention to add on to what the provost was saying is one initiative that we've been working on with our first year seminar is to have greater involvement of the career center so that students are understanding kind of that real value of a college degree. What a lot of the national data has on this has started to show is that a lot of male students are leaving higher education, in particular because they don't see that wide of a difference between what they are going to be earning if they essentially drop out and go straight into an entry-level position as opposed to those longer earning potentials there. So there's actually a financial component of this mixed up with any number of different other issues that are involved.
Thank you. Vice Chair Vasquez, you're recognized.
Thank you. I wanted to ask, and I apologize if you had mentioned this on Tuesday. So the data that is presented in these slides, was this for the Mesa campus solely, or did this also include Imperial Valley?
Some of both. Some of both. There's actually a slide. This was what I presented on Tuesday was a part of a broader presentation that I had actually shared with AP&P a few weeks ago. And for the sake of being concise, even though I probably already ran over my time at the time, I didn't include every single slide, but you will see in the PowerPoint that was actually emailed, there actually is a slide specific to Imperial Valley.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And again, I was wondering if you had maybe, well, it sounds like maybe you already have some slides that we refer to specifically for Imperial Valley with that kind of, I saw one slide on here related to Imperial Valley. I just didn't know the other previous slides might be disaggregated somewhere like on the website or something that could be
Yeah,
helpful.
I can see that a lot of our, and almost all these data are publicly available right on the ESER website. James Stronich, I'll give a big shout out to her and the team. They do just a fabulous job just putting all the data out there. And for almost every single one of those dashboards, you can toggle between San Diego, Imperial Valley, or both in terms of data points. So you can look at that by retention, graduation, any number of different variables.
Okay, I just wondering if there was like a cool PowerPoint like slide deck like this one for Imperial Valley in particular.
I've spoken actually with a number of Imperial Valley people about creating something like that. So it's on the to-do list.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Senator Schellenberg, you're recognized.
Thank you. Yeah, just quick clarification for slide 19. I think you hit this before, but you're showing that for fall 18 cohort, all those percentages where the equity gaps are being compared to the 56.3%.
Yeah, correct. Okay. As well as below in parentheses where we were a few years earlier.
Okay, but that 56.3% includes those subgroups.
That is correct.
Okay, so it's a little bit big.
Everybody, it's not
okay.
Group A versus Group B. It's everybody.
Okay, so the gap is bigger than it would appear marginally.
Yes, marginally.
And then for the just for the transfer, sorry, this is great data. I'm all excited about it. Also, we're comparing to the 88.8% for full-time transfer students from fall 18.
Correct.
Okay, so for that one, there's hardly a relatively little gap at all, right? Just
I mean, that's kind of the general trend with our transfer students. Overall, that the gaps tend to be really small.
Okay. All right, thank you. Thanks for clarifying.
Of course.
Seeing no other hands. Well, thank you both for this really important report. Provost Ochoa, do you have any final comments, or Stefan?
Yeah, I will say that one thing that, I really would emphasize is we look at our trajectory to R1, we have not forgot our mission as a teaching institution. And I think we're the only CSU that has really drilled down and looked at this not only at an overall level, but by college and by major to really make gains. And we, in spite of COVID, for many universities, the graduation rates have gone down. Ours are higher than they were pre-COVID. And we have made a significant gains in our graduation rates for underrepresented, for first gen, for Pell eligible. We continue to make progress, and we have reduced the equity gaps. The one sad thing, Nola, that I have to report is that while we made gains, we were making substantial gains, but this past year, the gains, graduation rates for African Americans did go down. And that is a concern to me that we really need to work on. But what we do see is that they're still coming. They're just taking longer to graduate in that perspective. But I do have that data. Every dean has one. So if you'd like, I ask that you reach out to your dean. Even IV has a report. And I think it's really helped us to make some progress. But I want to thank everyone, all of our efforts, because while we have reduced the equity gaps and we've raised our graduation rates for both transfers and for freshmen, entering freshmen, we still have work to do. But I'm very proud of the trajectory that we're on. And I think that's really important, that we not lose sight of that focus, our true mission of the CSU. That comes first and foremost.
All right. Thank you, Provost Ochoa. So we're 2 minutes before our time certain, but I know he's here. So we're going to turn to item 4.7, Vice President of IT, your report.
Thank you very much, Chair Butler-Byrd. Good afternoon to the Senate. I want to provide a brief update on my SDSU, and given the breadth of activities, want to talk a little bit about admissions, registration, financial aid, our student financial operations, the reports that are now in the hands of many faculty and staff, the request for additional my SDSU enhancements, and then where we are in support. I'll be brief and then happy to take questions. So from an admissions standpoint, want to talk first about undergraduate admissions. Right now, my SDSU has been used to extend offers to 19,155 undergraduate students. In terms of timing, the first round of international admissions have gone out. The second round of out-of-state students has now gone out. That was released last week. And the first round of admissions for Imperial Valley was released 2 weeks ago. If we transition to our graduate students, 1,085 graduate admission applications have now been advanced to departmental review. The intent to enroll process is now configured for graduate students, and the expectation is that the first round of official offers for admissions to graduate students will begin this week. That moves us into the already underway summer registration process. So that process began on March the 6th at 9 a.m. I do know that we have a question right now. We're waiting to post the same ability that we had before to download the entire summer schedule of classes. So that will be coming. We're trying to modify sort of the place that we put it before. So that'll be a feature that'll be coming shortly. In terms of fall registration, fall class schedule is going to be posted on my SDSU on the 20th of March. Student registration appointments will begin the same day. Last week, colleges were asked to submit any changes for their prerequisite enforcement that was due to the registrar by last Friday. They're in the process of implementing those before we begin our fall registration process, and that process will kick off on the 17th of April. I want to talk a little bit about financial aid and student financial operations. First, in terms of financial aid, we had talked a little bit about the fact that the state had changed the middle class scholarship eligibility, which meant that it was coming out later than before. I want to make sure that everyone knows that all of the middle class scholarships that the university received have now been awarded. That was nearly $27 million worth of aid, affecting approximately 11,000 students. That is up substantially due to the legislative change from the year before, where only $5 million was awarded to about 3.5 thousand students. The importance of that is not just the funding for our students in terms of that scholarship opportunity, but also because we are in the standard platform supported by the Chancellor's Office, this was something that we were able to adopt as modifications were made quickly. If we had had to do this ourselves in legacy, we probably would still be in the process of trying to get those lately awarded due to legislative change middle class scholarships out. Other thing that is important in terms of efficiency is our financial aid refunds. So right now, as we talk about our student financial operations, we've had $6 million in refunds to students that were processed after census. And just to give you an idea of old system, new system, in the old system, this would take us up to 6 weeks to accomplish. In my SDSU, we were able to get those refunds to students in just 1 week. One of the other things that we've been working on in collaboration with our faculty partners and also with our associate deans and deans is to make sure that folks have access to the data that they need. Know that there are still reports that are pending that are under development, but I did want to give an idea of sort of the number of data sources and reports that have come out right now of my SDSU. So if you look at the queries that have been done of my SDSU over the course of this semester, we're at 1.8 million reports. And those reports really cluster into 3 broad buckets. One of them, student financial operations. So reports that are necessary for student payment, direct deposit, refunds, admission advisor reports, and then probably the single report that's been used most broadly across campus would be the schedule of classes report. So we continue to work as we're converting other legacy data, things like ethnicity, into future reports, also reporting that's needed back to the Chancellor's Office, part of the ERSS reporting that will come later this spring. As we've talked and as a number of questions were asked before by the Senate, there are a number of enhancement requests that have been made for my SDSU. So we've set up a process to help prioritize those requests that we've received. either through the Senate, through associate deans, through deans, or through ServiceNow. A comprehensive list of those is being shared with a working group that's being created under the auspices of the Senate Information and Instructional Technology Committee. They will meet later this month, and they're being charged to help rank from a faculty and student perspective. I think it's also important to note that there is a student representative in this working group of everything that is an enhancement that's desired. What are the most important? We will then take that input, use that input to prioritize our available resources as we make those modifications. Take a step back and just look at the overall level of support. And right now we're sort of in a lull because we haven't begun really the fall registration cycle yet. If you go back to October, 2,400 support tickets have been submitted. We're now at the lowest point of sort of standing tickets that we've been since October. I've shared before that we were upwards somewhere in the range of about 300 with about 50 to 60 new tickets coming in a day. We're now more at the area of about 200, probably about 20 tickets coming in per day. The other thing that we've done is ask both faculty, staff, and students who are receiving support to sort of rank the input of the support that they're receiving on a 5-point scale, 5 being the very satisfied category, and of those people who have turned in rankings, and that's always one of those things that's difficult to incent. So you get what you get. The overall average in terms of support right now is at 3.91%. The other thing that we had talked about that I did want to make sure that we updated the Senate on was the staffing that had been lost due to early exit program, the impact that that had in our enrollment and records area, and also IT. So after considering those staffing needs, the cabinet working with the provost was able to develop a staffing reinvestment strategy that has allowed us to right now have a total of 10 positions that were lost during the early exit program coming back, along with probably 3, if I remember correctly, in IT, 1 in the graduate school. I think the other important thing about those additional staff, the reinvestment in the support infrastructure necessary to deal with the increased load that we have as we do the work that the CSU system has asked us to do, is also to point out that some of the efficiencies that we've been able to gain, allowing us to retarget these positions, were part of our strategic effort to look differently at IT. Right now, of the prior positions that were in the IT division, there are now 4 positions that have been distributed to records, student financial aid, financial operations, and our reporting team, because those functional areas are now more capable. And as opposed to keeping people who were primarily just IT people, we've moved into embedding those positions. We're in the process of recruiting them right now. Our first hire in that area who will go into admissions is someone who will start here in just a few weeks. So that's the nature of where we stand right now as we get ready for the onslaught that will be the fall registration activity, which again will cause both lots of questions and lots of support needs. So ready to deal with that surge. Happy to take questions from the Senate, Chair Butler-Byrd.
Thank you. Are there any questions? If so, please raise your hand. Senator Schellenberg, you're recognized.
Yeah, thank you for the report. I appreciate the effort to identify and prioritize improvements in the PeopleSoft. Change is hard, change is loss, but certainly there's some improvements to be made. I'm curious, you use the term as resources are available. There's a presumption here, not to put you on the spot, Jerry, because that's not fair, but will. Is there a presumption that there will be some real resources behind this to improve user interface and functionality and sort of reduce some of the pain points, even after we get used to a new system, right? Just number of clicks, optimization, shortcuts, those sorts of things.
Yes, Steve, there is. And one of the things that we're trying to do right now, which is a lot different than the way the legacy systems were maintained. The way the legacy systems were maintained, the bias was, let's do new things that might be desired without focusing on what it actually took to maintain the underlying system. So when I came in, just as a case in point, the underlying database that all of SIMS ran on was 2 years out of support because there had been a desire to do more enhancements as opposed to keeping the foundation fundamentally sound. We share that responsibility now with the Chancellor's Office. Again, that's one of the benefits of being in the system. What we're trying to do is sort of marry the prioritization that we'll get out of the Senate IIT working group, along with, once we look at what we need to do to maintain the environment, how much time do we have for enhancements, and then use that so we can be transparent with everyone about, you know, we've got X number of hours, here's the priorities that those things will be stacked up against. I do think the other thing that's beneficial is that there are additional enhancements that will come from the system as there are system mandates. Right now, as a case in point, there's a dependent child requirement that's a legislative requirement. In the old world, SDSU would have had to figure out what it was going to do, write the code, test the code. That's now done by the system. The system doesn't do that, unfortunately, for all executive orders or mandates, but it does do them for some. And that gives us an ability to take those things that in the past we would have borne on our own, move them more into improving user interface and some of the functionality of my SDSU. So that's how we're trying to strike that balance, Senator Schallenberg.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing no other hands, thank you very much, VP Sheehan, for your comprehensive report. Right now, we have item 4.8 and 4.9, and I know that Associated Students President Moore wasn't able to come today, and also the other item having to do with Mission Valley update, that will be at our April meeting. And then also Dean Love is not able to hear and wasn't able to send a representative, so we'll shift her item, the update about the graduate program fee waivers, that will also be at the next meeting. So on that note, we have covered all of our items. Thank you all so much for coming to this extended meeting so that we could finish these reports. Have a good rest of your week, and I want to ask if I can get a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
Thank you. And
Second.
Second. Thank you. And I assume everybody's in favor, so thank you all very much and have a good rest of your day. Bye-bye.